A humble girl quietly pays for a stranger's breakfast, never imagining he's a powerful CEO. What happened next left the entire place speechless. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The diner smelled of sizzling butter and freshly brewed coffee, a comforting aroma that wrapped the regulars in nostalgia every morning at 6:45 a.m. sharp. It was the kind of place where truckers tipped their hats to teachers, where college kids pulled all-nighters over bottomless mugs, and where every booth had a story etched into the scarred formica. Cami Alvarez, 23, ponytail escaping a thrift store scrunchie, slipped through the entrance precisely 2 minutes before her shift at the bakery across the street. She clutched a chipped mug gifted by her late grandma and an overstuffed canvas tote full of biology textbooks, sketch pads, and coupon envelopes. Every step she took whispered thrift and frugality. The faded jeans patched at both knees, the dollar store sneakers, the second-hand coat 3 sizes too big because it had been the only one on clearance last winter. The bell above the door jingled. Cami's eyes darted to the wall clock. Perfect. Still time for her twice-a-week ritual. A small black coffee and 2 slices of rye toast, no butter. $3.08, including tax, and more importantly, including tip. Today, though, the diner was unusually crowded. A storm had knocked out power in half of downtown, pushing the city's usual breakfast crowd toward the only joint still running on generators. Booths were packed. Every stool at the counter was claimed by bleary-eyed commuters scrolling headlines about layoffs and market crashes. Cami scanned the room for a single open seat, but the only possibility was the far corner booth, a table meant for 4, occupied by one man who sat perfectly still, as though carved from the polished mahogany. He blended in and yet didn't. Navy wool overcoat draped over the seat beside him, Italian leather shoes that were definitely not from any bargain rack, and a face too composed for this hour. Strong jaw, impeccably trimmed beard, hair slicked back wet from the rain. His eyes, gray like a sky that promises either dawn or disaster, flicked up from a plain spiral notebook when Cami approached. Ask the staff to share, she wondered. But the waitresses were drowning in orders. The big guy behind the counter rolled his eyes as another customer waved for refills. If Cami hesitated, she'd miss her window and show up late to the bakery again, which meant the manager would dock her pay again, and her week's budget would implode like a soufflé left unattended. Summoning courage, she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and stepped forward. "Excuse me, are you expecting company?" The man's posture softened by an imperceptible degree. He placed a silver pen across the notebook's open page before answering, "No, please, sit." Cami slid into the opposite bench but kept her backpack perched on her lap like a shield. "Thanks. I'll be quick. I just need a coffee and some toast." He offered a slight nod before returning to his notes, rows of numbers that looked less like grocery lists and more like forecasts. Cami glanced away. Nosiness was a luxury for people with fully funded public transportation cards. A waitress hurried over, cheeks flushed from the kitchen's heat. "What can I get ya?" "Small coffee, black," Cami said. "2 slices of rye, please." She placed 3 wrinkled dollar bills and a dime on the edge of the table before the waitress could protest the flood of new customers. The stranger shifted, eyes flicking again to her paltry order, then to the money she had readied in advance. He raised his hand. "Add the lumberjack breakfast for me and whatever she's having," he told the waitress. Cami's cheeks burned. "Oh, no, that's not necessary. I'm fine, really." The waitress cocked an eyebrow. "Sure thing, hun," she told the man, scribbling on her pad. To Cami, she winked as if fate had just dealt her a better hand. Then she was gone, vanishing behind swinging doors that sighed with grease and exhaustion. Cami leaned forward, whisper hushed. "I appreciate the gesture, but I can pay for myself." She pushed her small pile of cash toward the center line of the table like a demarcation of independence. The man closed his notebook, folding his hands atop it. Consider it an apology. For what? For taking up an entire booth when people need seats. A ghost of a smile tugged at his mouth. And for not noticing sooner. Cammy studied him, searching for sarcasm. All she found was sincere politeness, the kind you might expect from diplomats, not from men who could crush numbers at dawn in a corner booth. She inhaled as if daring herself to interpret him. "Well, apology accepted, but I still can't let you pay." "Try," he said, not unkindly. His gaze moved to her mug. She'd brought it out of habit, knowing most diners would oblige her BYO cup strategy to save 15 cents. He pointed subtly. "That mug has a story." Cammy softened. "It was my grandmother's. She raised me. She used to say coffee tastes best when the cup has heard your secrets." The man's eyebrows lifted, a genuine engaged reaction, not the mechanical politeness she received from customers at the bakery. "Smart woman." "Smart and stubborn," Cammy agreed, "which is why I'm telling you, please let me pay my own way." He nodded slowly. "Then allow me to pay mine, plus the tip. The staff are drowning this morning." She exhaled, tension diffusing into the hum of the diner's neon lights. "Deal. Thank you." Moments later, the waitress returned with a platter fit for a lumberjack. Pancakes, bacon, eggs, potatoes, and to Cammy's horror, a duplicate placed in front of her alongside her humble toast. The stranger spoke before she could object. "I asked them to bring a second plate by mistake. I can't possibly finish both. Could I impose on you to help me avoid waste?" Cammy's pride wrestled with the sight of fluffy pancakes drizzled in maple syrup, bacon curling seductively beside crispy hash browns. She hadn't had a hearty breakfast since last semester's finals, when a classmate had paid her to edit a thesis and insisted they celebrate with all-you-can-eat waffles. Her stomach growled, undermining her resistance. She laughed, small, embarrassed. "Fine, for the sake of the kitchen, but I owe you." "Not at all." He poured syrup across both plates as though dividing territory, then offered her the first fork. "I'm Miles, by the way." She hesitated. Politeness dictated she reciprocate. "Cammy." She cut into a pancake, fluffy steam curling upward. "So, Miles, what brings you to a diner at dawn during a citywide blackout?" He considered, as if calculating how much truth belonged in a casual answer. "Old habits. I like watching cities wake up. Sometimes clarity hides in the ordinary." "That sounds like something a poet would say," Cammy teased, sipping her coffee. Refill free, courtesy of her new plate companion. "Poetry is just pattern recognition with better metaphors," Miles answered, surprising her. "And pattern recognition is the heart of business." She nearly choked on a crumb of toast. "Business? Let me guess. Marketing strategist? Maybe finance?" "Something like that." Before she could probe, her phone vibrated, a reminder that waved red flags about time. "Shoot," she muttered, checking the screen. "I'm gonna be late." She inhaled her last bite and reached for the tote. Miles signaled for the waitress, who slid the bill onto his side. His pen scribbled a signature. No card, no cash, just an account number and a tiny flourish. A house account? In a diner? Cammy blinked. The waitress smiled approvingly at Miles, then at Cammy. "Y'all have a blessed day." The subtext, he's a regular and a very good tipper. Outside, rain had quieted to a hesitant drizzle. Cammy jogged across the street toward the bakery's back entrance, Miles matching her pace beneath a giant black umbrella that appeared as if conjured. "You don't have to walk me," Cammy said, though she secretly welcomed the shelter. "City's still half dark, I'd rather make sure you're not late on my account." There it was again. Responsibility laced with something gentler than courtesy. They reached the bakery door. Warm, yeasty aromas greeted them from the loading bay. Cammy wiped her shoes on the mat. "Well, thank you. For breakfast. And conversation." She tried to hand him her $3 and dime. He raised his palm, refusing. "Would you humor me instead?" Tomorrow morning, same diner, my treat, but you choose the table. Cammy's heartbeat skipped between caution and intrigue. Is that a date? Call it mutualistic symbiosis. His half-smile suggested he enjoyed watching her attempt to categorize him. You need a seat and caffeine before work. I value conversation that doesn't revolve around quarterly projections. Her cheeks warmed again. Okay, but only if you let me buy your coffee at my bakery's employee discount on the way out. Deal. They parted. Cammy ducked inside, Miles strolling away, umbrella glinting neon reflections in puddles. She watched from the doorway as he turned the corner, disappearing into early morning blur. Who was this man who quoted poetry and offset lumberjack breakfasts against citywide blackouts? Inside, the bakery manager barked about late deliveries, but Cammy floated through her tasks, smiling at dough that rose obediently in proofing drawers. She could almost taste maple syrup with each inhale of cinnamon sugar. During lunch break, curiosity nudged her to Google Miles, plus a few details. Finance, city, philanthropy. But she stopped herself. Grandma's mug warmed her hands as if whispering, let a story unfold at its own pace. Across town, on the 43rd floor of a glass tower that still buzzed despite the blackout, Miles H. Whitaker, interim CEO of Whitaker Frey Holdings, stepped out of the elevator. A swarm of assistants trailed, tablets glowing. Mr. Whitaker, the European investors moved the call up an hour, one announced. Another handed him a dossier. We've flagged 3 vendors for potential acquisition. Miles paused long enough to open his spiral notebook, the same one from the diner, to a fresh page. In the margin, he scribbled a single line. Cammy, humble, stubborn, resilient. Then he clicked his pen closed, mask of corporate efficiency sliding into place. None of his aides knew he'd just shared breakfast with someone who still clipped coupons. No one knew he'd spent an hour savoring the diner's anonymity. They wouldn't understand why the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate would trade a boardroom latte for burnt coffee in a chipped mug. At 6:45 a.m. the next morning, the bell above the diner door chimed again. Miles was already in the corner, 2 black coffees waiting, but no lumberjack feast, not today. Instead, he'd asked the waitress to bring the menu for Cammy to choose. Cammy paused in the doorway, breath caught between nerves and hunger. The diner smelled the same, sizzling butter, endless possibilities. But it felt different now, as if the air itself hesitated, aware that the next few minutes could alter the trajectory of 2 very distant worlds. Rain rattled against the diner's plate glass windows like a drummer too eager for the downbeat, but the hiss of traffic on slick asphalt created a lullaby of city restlessness that made everything inside feel warmer, almost intimate. At precisely 6:43 a.m., Cammy pushed through the door, cheeks flushed from jogging the last block in drizzle that soaked her oversized coat. A grin curled at the corner of her mouth when she saw Miles stand and raise a hand in greeting. He'd arrived early, again. 2 steaming mugs waited side by side, catching the overhead light in gentle halos. Cammy slipped out of her coat, shaking off water droplets that gleamed like crystal shards before they vanished into the rubber mat. Her tote hit the vinyl bench with a thud. Today it carried not only biology notes but also a freshly wrapped cinnamon apple turnover from the bakery, still warm in wax paper. You kept your promise, Miles said, eyes flicking to the pastry she placed between them. He looked impossibly rested for a man rumored to run empires. Business casual replaced yesterday's couture, rolled-up sleeves, no tie, a hint of steel watch beneath the cuff, but he still radiated that quiet authority that made people straighten their posture within a 5-foot radius. I always keep pastry promises, Cammy replied, then added with playful sternness, but remember, my treat. Bakery discount, remember? Miles bowed his head in mock acquiescence. Consider me honor-bound. He gestured toward her mug. Black, right? 2 sugars? 1 sugar, she corrected, trying to wean. She took a tentative sip. No diner brew ever matched the richness of beans roasted on campus, yet there was comfort in the bitterness, a flavor that mirrored life's little struggles. A waitress bustled over, pencil poised above pad. "Morning, folks. Same as yesterday, handsome?" Miles glanced at Cammy first, an unspoken invitation. She scanned the laminated menu. "Actually, could I get the veggie omelet instead of toast?" The waitress nodded and scribbled. Miles ordered a simple oatmeal with blueberries, shocking Cammy. She'd half expected another lumberjack platter. "When you run numbers all day, you learn to moderate," he offered, sensing her curiosity. "Yesterday was indulgent." "And generous," she conceded. "So let me cover coffee?" She slid 2 quarters across the table. Her bakery discount brought the mug to a cool 60 cents. Miles pocketed them with a straight face. An equitable partnership. And then he reclined, fingertips bridged. "Tell me something your textbooks will never cover, something uniquely Cammy." She chuckled, sipping. "Like a fun fact?" "Okay. I memorize scientific names of flowers to de-stress. Latin calms me." She shrugged, self-conscious. "Nerdy and useless." "Nothing useless about finding calm," he countered. "And Latin roots show up everywhere, finance included. Credere means to trust. Good accounting is as much about trust as numbers." She arched a brow. "You do finance, then?" "Among other things." He deflected with a polite smile, but curiosity glimmered behind his gray eyes. "Your turn. Ask me anything. Fair trade." Cammy leaned over the table. "What were you writing yesterday? Looked like forecasts." Miles hesitated, weighing transparency against discretion. Before he could answer, the waitress returned, sliding plates onto the table. Veggie omelet oozing cheddar, oatmeal crowned with a blueberry constellation. Steam curled upward, drawing Miles's answer along with it. "Risk profiles," he said finally. "I evaluate how storms, literal or figurative, ripple through markets." Cammy twirled her fork. "And diners at dawn help with that?" He broke a blueberry between spoon and bowl. "Perspective. Data looks different when you remember the people beneath the graphs." The words felt rehearsed, yet sincere. She suspected he'd given variations of that explanation in interviews, but something about the softness in his voice told her he meant it differently with her, less PR, more confession. Minutes melted, conversation danced from favorite authors, her, Octavia Butler, him, Marcus Aurelius, to childhood memories, her county fair spelling bee trophies, his summers fishing on a foggy Maine inlet. She teased him for quoting Stoic philosophy like a company slogan. He ribbed her for carrying coupon envelopes like rare manuscripts. At 7:28 a.m., Cammy checked her phone. "I should run or I'll miss inventory." She stood, pulling on her damp coat. Miles rose too, slipping a business card onto the table, embossed only with his name and a private number, no company, no title. "If you ever need anything, references, tutoring resources, even just better coffee, call." She pocketed it with a coy smile. "Dangerous to hand out blank checks to strangers." "I vetted you," he said lightly. "Anyone who pays 60 cents for coffee is unlikely to bankrupt me." Outside, he opened his umbrella. They crossed to the bakery under its arc. Before she vanished inside, he cleared his throat. "I'm hosting a gala tomorrow night. Small fundraiser for science scholarships. Would you consider attending? As my guest?" She sputtered. "Me? At a gala? I don't have a ball gown stashed between flour sacks." "I'll arrange everything," he offered, then quickly added, "No strings. Just thought you might like to see where those Latin flower names could bloom. Full ride grants for botany students." It tugged at her mission. Still, red flags waved. Cinderella invitations rarely ended at midnight. "I'll think about it," she said, then disappeared behind industrial ovens and clanging trays. Miles stared at the swinging door long after it stilled. An aide's text buzzed. "Board meeting in 40 minutes." He swallowed a sigh. Time to resume the mask. At Whitaker Frey headquarters, tension pulsed like an electrical fault. Share prices had wobbled after rumors leaked. The firm was weighing layoffs despite record profits. Miles strode into the boardroom, rainwater still dusting his shoes. 11 directors ringed an oval table. At the head sat Veronica Frey, co-founder's widow, sharp as the diamond pin securing her silk scarf. She greeted him with a thin smile. "Miles, glad you could spare time between your field studies." Her gaze lingered on his damp hair. He offered equal politeness. "Always a pleasure, Veronica." They dove into agenda. First, cost-cutting proposals. HR had suggested shuttering 2 regional branches, affecting 1,200 employees. Miles scanned the report, jaw tightening. "We improve margins by 3%, CFO Durant concluded, adjusting his glasses. "At what social cost?" Miles asked. Silence thickened. "Those branches supply entire local economies." Veronica interlaced manicured fingers. "Your philanthropic programs can cushion them, I'm sure. We're fiduciaries first." Miles closed the folder. "I'll deliver an alternative plan within 48 hours. No layoffs." Veronica's smile chilled. 48 hours, then." Meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped like disapproving whispers. Back in his office, Miles stared at cityscape drowned in pewter clouds. He loved numbers, but hated when they eclipsed human stories. And in that diner, he'd tasted humanity's grit in burnt coffee and coupon stacks. He couldn't forget. He dialed his assistant. "Pull data on branch productivity, training gaps, community partnerships. I need to prove we can pivot to reskill, not fire." "Understood, sir." He ended the call, but his mind drifted to Cammy. If the board moved faster than his plan, layoffs could hit her neighborhood bakery, outsource pastry production to corporate suppliers. Would she still bring her grandma's mug to a diner then? He rubbed his temples. Maybe inviting her to the gala was reckless, but he needed a reminder, living, breathing, of who his decisions impacted. The following evening, Cammy stood in front of a full-length mirror in a borrowed studio apartment above the bakery. Her co-worker Maya, fashion school dropout turned frosting artist, buzzed around, adjusting, pinning, powdering. Miles's arrangements had arrived that afternoon, a navy velvet gown with cap sleeves, silver heels, and a simple pearl pendant. Cammy had balked. Maya had squealed, dragging her upstairs for a Cinderella crash course. "I look like an imposter," Cammy whispered. The dress hugged her curves, but she worried she'd spill compliments like icing. Maya placed hands on her shoulders. "Girl, you look like generational wealth just met genuine kindness. Own it." A black town car waited outside. The driver offered a gloved hand. Heart hammering, Cammy slid into leather interior scented faintly of cedar, and something rarer, maybe privilege. As downtown lights blurred past, she rehearsed Latin names under her breath to stay calm. Bellis perennis, Chrysanthemum exmorifolium. The car stopped before the Whitaker Frey atrium, 30 floors of glass shimmering under spotlights. A red carpet walkway funneled guests through revolving doors into an oasis of white orchids and strings quartet harmonies. She clutched her clutch so tight pearls imprinted on her palms. Photographers shouted as celebrities alighted from limousines. She flinched until she realized lenses weren't aimed at her. Yet, Miles emerged from inside, descending marble steps. In tuxedo, he looked sculpted by architects obsessed with precision. He noted her hesitation and offered his arm. "Breathe," he advised softly. "Gala rule number 1. No one here knows you're not used to this. Act bored. They'll assume you belong." She laughed in disbelief but placed her gloved fingers on his sleeve. Cameras pivoted, flashbulbs exploded, reporters craned. Miles leaned to her ear. "Gala rule number 2. When in doubt, lead with curiosity. People love talking about themselves." Inside, crystal chandeliers spilled galaxies of light. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and bite-sized masterpieces. Cammy accepted a flute, almost dropping it when she recognized the mayor chatting with NBA legends by an ice sculpture of double helix. A stage dominated one end, flanked by banners. Whitaker Frey Foundation, STEM scholarships for underserved youth. Relief washed through her. At least the cause aligned with her dreams. Miles guided her through clusters of donors. He introduced her simply as Cami Alvarez, aspiring botanist, leaving titles unsaid. Some guests offered polite nods, others genuine interest. Cammy's nerves thawed as she described her research about urban rooftop pollinator gardens. She cited Latin names, and watching their puzzled delight reinforced that knowledge trumped couture. During a lull, Miles stole them away to a quieter mezzanine overlooking the dance floor. Projected constellations shimmered on the vaulted ceiling. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I haven't tripped or spilled," she beamed. "Small miracles count." He chuckled. "You've inspired 3 donors already. The rooftop gardens concept is brilliant." Cammy sipped water. "Ideas are easy. Funding's the hurdle." Miles's expression turned solemn. "We can change that." Before she could parse his meaning, Veronica Frey materialized. Tall, elegant, a storm in midnight silk. "Miles," she purred, eyes flicking to Cammy with laser appraisal. "Introduce me?" "Veronica, this is Cammy Alvarez, a friend." He squeezed Cammy's hand gently as if transferring courage. "Cammy, Ms. Frey is our board chair." Veronica offered a brittle smile. "Charmed." Her gaze assessed Cammy's dress, pendant, posture, all within a heartbeat. "Enjoying the evening?" "It's dazzling," Cammy said, suddenly aware of every borrowed inch of fabric. "And the cause is close to my heart." "Indeed," Veronica replied. She looped her arm through Miles's possessively. "Miles, the governor wants a word about tax credits. Shall we?" Her voice left no room for dissent. Cammy stepped back. Miles shot an apologetic glance. "I'll be right back." She watched them descend the staircase, Veronica whispering fiercely, Miles's shoulders tight. A violist struck the first chord of a waltz. Couples twirled, but Cammy felt adrift, an extra in someone else's dream. She wandered to a balcony for fresh air. City lights glittered like shards of broken CDs. Below, traffic pulsed. She exhaled, calming herself with botanical Latin. Anemone hupahensis. A soft voice interrupted. "You must be the pastry girl." Cammy turned. Durant, the CFO, leaned against the balustrade, bourbon in hand. "Word travels. Quite the leap from bakery ovens to gala glitz." Cammy forced a polite smile. "Just enjoying the night." Durant studied her, something calculating behind his cordial veneer. "Miles is a private man. Fascinating that he invited you." He swirled his drink. "Tell me, how well do you know our CEO?" "I don't." She wrapped her arms around herself. Evening breeze raised goosebumps. "We're friends." "Friends," Durant hummed as though analyzing data. "Be cautious. People around here often become leverage." Heat pricked her neck. "Leverage for what?" He tipped his glass in a half-toast. "You'll see." Then he strode away, leaving Cammy shivering in confusion. Inside, applause erupted. A scholarship recipient delivered an inspiring speech. Cammy returned just as Miles reappeared, looking drained. He saw her unease. "Everything okay?" She hesitated, then blurted, "Your CFO warned me I'm leverage." "What does that mean?" Miles's jaw clenched. He guided her to a secluded alcove behind potted palms. "Durant oversteps." He exhaled. "Short version, I'm pushing against layoffs. Some board members think I'm distracted. They'll exploit any angle." "So I'm a liability," she summarized, hurt, flickering. "Absolutely not." He cupped her elbows. "You remind me why these decisions matter. If that threatens their profits, so be it." She searched his eyes. "Your world is complicated. "I'm trying to simplify," he whispered. Music swelled, an irresistible swell of strings. "Dance with me?" he asked. She placed her hand in his. They joined the swirling couples under galaxies of light. He led gently, each step synced to her nervous laughter. Around them, whispers rose, rumors mapping class divides. Yet for 3 minutes, there were only 2 heartbeats, 1 dance floor. As the song ended, Veronica stood on stage, microphone glittering. "Ladies and gentlemen, our silent auction centerpiece, a private brunch atop Whitaker Frey Tower hosted by Mr. Miles Whitaker himself." She paused, gazing toward the dance floor where Miles and Cammy stood intertwined. "And his lovely guest this evening." Cameras flashed, a spotlight pinned them, gasps rippled, donors craned, Cammy's cheeks flamed. Veronica smiled like a queen who'd set a trap. Miles squeezed Cammy's hand, whispering, "Ignore them." But whisperers hissed, "Who is she? Social climber? Gold digger?" Cammy inhaled shakily. Veronica continued, "Bidding starts at $50,000. Hands shot up, competitive, ravenous. Each bid hammered another nail in gossip's coffin. Whoever won would pay for brunch with high society's newest curiosity, and perhaps pry secrets from Whitaker's mysterious companion. Cammy tugged Miles aside. "This is a spectacle." "I'll cancel the auction," he muttered. Too late. The gavel fell at $125,000. Winner, CFO Durant, smug behind his whiskey smile. Applause thundered. Veronica smirked, victory settling around her shoulders like fur. Durant raised his glass toward Cammy. She understood then. Leverage. Miles's fists clenched. "I won't let them use you." The orchestra resumed, but tension drowned melody. Miles guided her off the floor. "Time to leave." As they reached the foyer, a security guard intercepted him. "Sir, urgent call. Board line." Miles cursed under his breath. "Give me 5 minutes." To Cammy. "Wait by the driver. I'll explain everything." She nodded, but worry gnawed. He answered the call in a side office. Veronica's voice crackled through speaker. "Miles, HR implemented the closure memo. 2 branches, effective immediately." His breath stopped. "That's impossible." "I rescinded." Board majority voted. Durant rallied them. "Your little charity act couldn't distract shareholders forever." Her tone icing. "Focus on growth. And maybe choose your companions more. Strategically." The line went dead. Outside, Cammy stood beneath portico lights, gown muddied at him by passing taxis. The black town car idled. She fidgeted with her pendant, heart hitching in premonition. From the far curb, Durant watched, phone pressed to ear, eyes fixed on her like a hawk measuring prey. Thunder rumbled, rain threatened. Miles burst from the building, tie askew. "We're leaving. Now." They slid into the car, doors locked. The driver peeled away from the curb. Inside, tension sharper than broken glass. Cammy reached for Miles's hand. It trembled. "What happened?" she whispered. His answer came hoarse. "They just killed 1,200 jobs." She swallowed. "Because of me?" "Because of greed. But they'll spin any narrative." His eyes bled fury and helplessness. Cammy gripped his hand tighter. "Then we'll fight. We'll find another plan." Miles looked at her, really looked. "I don't deserve your faith." "Maybe not, but you've got it." Outside, lightning forked across skyscrapers, illuminating 2 worlds colliding inside one speeding car. Hers of coupons and crumbling dough, his of boardrooms and billion-dollar stakes. As thunder rolled, both knew the coming storm would test more than quarterly projections. It would test loyalty, resilience, and whether 2 strangers who bonded over burnt coffee could rewrite a narrative written by power. The car raced into the night, taillights swallowed by rain. The windshield wipers beat a frantic rhythm as the car sped down Riverside Boulevard, sluicing curtains of rain into momentary transparency. In the dim glow of passing street lamps, Miles looked 10 years older, jacket rumpled, bow tie yanked loose, hair disheveled by the panic of too many collisions between conscience and power. Cammy kept her hand on his, thumb tracing small circles that felt like an anchor against currents threatening to sweep him under. "I tried, Cammy," his voice cracked. "I built a reskilling initiative, a 12-month bridge, but Durant and Veronica blindsided me." He squeezed his eyes shut, jaw clenching. 1,200 families, gone with one vote. She inhaled, steadying herself. "We still have tools. Media, unions, local councils. They issued notices 20 minutes ago." He pulled out his phone. Notification banners flashed crimson headlines. Whitaker fray to close Midwestern ops, streamline costs. Beneath it, smaller text, CEO Whitaker silent at gala while layoffs announced. He tossed the device onto the seat as if it burned. "They're spinning it as my initiative, claiming it funds scholarships." Cammy's stomach twisted. "They weaponized your philanthropy." "Leverage," he muttered, remembering Durant's warning. "First they use you to isolate me, then they fire thousands and blame my charity distraction." Lightning split the sky, illuminating his profile. Mask of composure shattered into raw anguish. Cammy's instincts, forged in nights of counting every cent, switched to pragmatic. "Okay, let's triage." Triage? Step 1, get out of our heads, gather facts. Step 2, identify pressure points. Step 3, expose truth before they cement their narrative. She straightened. "I may be a pastry girl, but I know crisis from the bottom rung up. People fear silence more than bad news, so we speak." Miles blinked, a spark of resolve catching. "You'd stand in this storm?" "Your storm is my storm now," she said, surprising herself with conviction. "You fed me pancakes, remember? That's blood oath territory." He laughed, a short, incredulous bark, but it cut through despair like a crack of sun. "Then let's start at the eye." He tapped the glass partition. "Change of destination. Take us to 330 Hudson, corporate annex." The driver nodded, adjusting route. Cammy raised brows. "Everyone's home at 11 p.m. Except the crisis comms skeleton crew. They'll have insider threads, maybe leak logs of board votes." He rubbed his temples. "But we need proof Durant orchestrated this." "Paper trail's your forte," she reminded. "Risk profiles, remember?" He inhaled. "Right." 30 minutes later, they swept through the annex's back entrance. Inside, emergency lighting flickered. The blackout still plagued half the grid. A lone security guard recognized Miles, waving them through to executive elevators. The car hummed upward, cables a lullaby of altitude. They exited on the 18th floor. Brand new crisis response suite smelling of fresh paint and burnt coffee. 2 analysts stared at screens alive with trending hashtags. "Whitaker lays waste. Gala while we fall." Both jumped when Miles and Cammy appeared. "Mr. Whitaker, sir. Didn't expect you," stammered Jenna, a 20-something communications grad, eyes ringed by blue light fatigue. "Good evening, Jenna." Miles slipped into command mode. "Pull board vote logs, time-stamped emails from Durant and HR to site managers. We'll draft a counterstatement citing irregular vote procedure." Jenna hesitated. Ms. Frey gave explicit instructions to route all media lines through her office. Miles's tone sharpened. "Board chair oversees governance. CEO oversees operations and public trust. Retrieve the files, now." Jenna nodded, fingers flying over keys. Her colleague Wayne handed Miles a flash drive. "This has HR's termination packet. They used a template dated 5 days ago, clearly premeditated." "That's our smoking gun." Miles pocketed it. He faced Cammy, voice low. "But proof means nothing if the public can't parse corporate jargon. We need human faces." Cammy pictured customers at the bakery, truckers whose paychecks fed families paycheck to paycheck. She'd visited Midwestern towns on church mission trips. She could almost hear factory whistles go silent. "We go to them," Miles considered. Security risk for you. I grew up dodging loan sharks, I'll manage. He cracked a rueful smile. All right, tomorrow we fly to Elm Ridge, one of the closing branches. We'll listen. Near dawn, Miles ushered Cammy into a guest suite atop the annex. Sleek, sterile, but stocked with toiletries and a wardrobe of brand-new loungewear. You need rest, he insisted. We leave at noon. She surveyed the king-size bed, feeling out of place. I don't own pajamas nice enough for this view. Miles's expression softened. Take anything. Charge your phone. Room service is 24/7. He lingered, words unspoken, then stepped back. Good night, Cammy. When the door clicked shut, she exhaled pent-up shivers. Rain hammered the panoramic windows. She texted Maya, long story, headed on work trip, cover shift. Maya replied with 99 exclamation points and a gif of Cinderella boarding a jet. Cammy laughed, tears prickling. She set her grandma's mug on the nightstand, touched its faded floral rim. Wish me luck, Grandma. Sleep came in fitful waves, dreams of dough mixing with stock tickers and boardroom glares. Miles didn't sleep. He paced his office, blueprinting contingencies. If Durant forged predated documents, there must be server logs. He called IT at 3 a.m., ordered a forensic audit. He drafted a memo reinstating employees contingent on board reversal, a gambit that could cost his job. As last darkness dissolved, he faced his reflection. Tie gone, top buttons undone, vulnerability etched like fine cracks across porcelain composure. He whispered to the empty room, "Hang on, folks. We're coming." Flight 7 a.m. charter to Elm Ridge swung low over endless quilted farmland before descending toward a small municipal airstrip. Cammy looked out oval window, cheeks pressed to glass. Silos dotted fields, smoke curled from brick chimneys. She imagined families inside scrolling layoff headlines while oatmeal cooled in chipped bowls. On the tarmac, a battered pickup awaited. The driver, Lupe Morales, plant foreman and 20-year company veteran, greeted Miles with wary eyes. "Sir, didn't expect you." Miles shook her calloused hand. Wanted to offer answers face to face. Lupe's gaze drifted to Cammy. Miles introduced her as community liaison. Cammy nearly laughed. New title, new world. They drove toward town, conversation tense. Lupe explained 400 workers got notices, severance minimal. "Folks here bled for Whitaker Frey," she said, voice quavering. "Now, holidays coming, kids needing coats, and we're tossed." Miles's knuckles whitened. "I'm here to fix it." "At this point, sir, I'll believe action, not words." Factory gates loomed, blue corrugated metal, temporarily closed banner snapping in wind. Dozens of employees clustered, some holding signs, "Keep our jobs, families before profits." As Miles stepped out, a murmur rippled, some boos, some hopeful cheers. Cameras from local news pivoted. Cammy's pulse pounded, spotlights déjà vu. She reminded herself, speak human truth. She approached a cluster of mothers cradling toddlers in crocheted hats. "I'm Cammy," she said, shaking hands. "We're here to hear you." One mother, Ebony Pierce, recounted overtime stretches to afford her son's epilepsy meds. Another, Harold Jensen, explained he'd postponed kidney surgery because his health coverage now vanished. Each story carved lines deeper into Miles's face. News vans parked, reporters thrust mics. "Mr. Whitaker, why did you greenlight layoffs while hosting charity galas?" Miles steadied breath. "I did not authorize these cuts. Certain board members enacted them without full transparency. I'm here to correct that and safeguard every job we can." He detailed his reskilling plan, promised to petition for emergency board review, pledging public updates within 72 hours. Skeptical faces softened. A steelworker shouted, "Talk is cheap." Miles nodded. "Then hold me to it." He handed Lupe his personal number. As midday sun edged through clouds, Miles and Cammy toured the shuttered plant. Machines sat idle, still warm with potential. "Waste," he muttered. This line could pivot to renewable tech components. He snapped photos, dictating ideas. Back in Town Square, they set up a pop-up help desk in the library, connecting workers to legal aid, resume workshops, mental health counselors. Cammy brewed drip coffee in borrowed church carafes, smiling despite exhaustion. She taped homemade flyers, free childcare during info sessions sponsored by Whitaker Frey Foundation. During a lull, Lupe pulled Cammy aside. He seems sincere, but we've seen CEOs appear for cameras then vanish. Cammy met her gaze. If he vanishes, I'll drag him back. She smiled, revealing steel. Lupe burst into laughter, clasping Cammy's shoulders. I believe you. Night in Elm Ridge smelled of wood smoke and diesel. Miles and Cammy checked into a no-frills motel. Walls wood-paneled like 1970 hadn't ended. Only one vacancy remained, 2 twin beds. They exchanged awkward glances before Miles said, "We'll survive. Tomorrow's fight matters more than optics." Cammy nodded, throat tight. They debriefed on opposite beds, laptops glowing. It had emailed preliminary logs, Durant's alias, altered timestamp metadata, forging emergency closure memo. Bingo. Miles typed furiously, a letter to shareholders citing breach of fiduciary duty, calling for special vote to remove Durant from CFO and censure Veronica for procedural misconduct. He attached proof. Cammy helped craft narrative in plain English. 1,200 families deserve better. She sprinkled quotes from workers, Latin plant metaphors about regrowth after fire. Miles paused mid-type, studying her. You rewrite numbers into people. She shrugged. Every pastry's chemistry and story. At 2 a.m., they sent the letter to national press, whistleblower hotlines, and labor unions. Then silence reigned, the anticipatory hush before dawn battle. Miles collapsed onto his pillow, murmuring, "Thank you for believing." Cammy's eyelids fluttered. "Thank you for pancakes." They drifted to sleep, twin lungs breathing in sync with motel AC clunks. Morning exploded with notifications. Cable news ticker. Whitaker CEO accuses board of fraud. Workers rally. Social feeds praising Miles's stand. Others calling internal civil war. Veronica issued statement calling allegations baseless melodrama. Durant remained unreachable. Back at headquarters, majority investors demanded emergency meeting. Hours later, a whistleblower in accounting leaked Durant's personal offshore transfers. Boardroom dominoes toppled. 3 days passed in blur. A special shareholder vote ousted Durant, suspended Veronica pending investigation, reinstated plant operations with immediate effect. Miles announced a community investment package double the original cost-cut savings. At Elm Ridge, sirens blared. Not police, but factory whistles, machines humming back to life. Workers hugged, tears streaked sooty cheeks. Miles stood on a makeshift podium, a pallet stack draped in Whitaker Frey banner, Cammy at his side, clutching a thermos of diner coffee. "I made promises," he told the crowd. "You held me accountable. This victory is yours. We will upskill, not offload. Our strength is people, not spreadsheets." Applause thundered. When cheers subsided, Ebony Pierce stepped forward, handing Miles a tiny vial, inside, a single crimson petal. "From my mama's rosebush," she said. "A reminder, prune wrong, plant dies. Treat it right, it blooms stronger." Miles nodded, sliding petal into his notebook. Tears glistened, reporters clustered. One asked, "Mr. Whitaker, what changed your heart?" Miles glanced at Cammy. "A friend reminded me why clarity hides in the ordinary." Cammy blushed, sipping coffee. She felt cameras but didn't flinch. This wasn't gala spectacle. This was truth reclaimed. That evening, the diner lights winked like old friends as Miles and Cammy slipped into their corner booth. No paparazzi, just sizzling butter and laughter from a waitress who greeted them by name. "Your usuals?" she asked. Cammy grinned. "Make it pancakes, for both." She nudged Miles. "Indulgence earned." He laughed, surrendering. Their mugs clinked. Outside, rain had stopped. Streetlights shimmered on wet pavement, reflecting two silhouettes leaning closer over maple-coated promises. Forks clinked against china, while dawn's first blush crept through greasy diner blinds, painting stripes of pale rose across the scarred formica. Miles carved into his pancakes without the stiff composure of a CEO, each bite slow, deliberate, as though tasting relief itself. Cammy, across from him, nibbled on her own stack, chin resting in her palm, eyes studying him between sips of coffee. "For a man who just toppled half his board, you're unnervingly quiet," she teased. He dabbed syrup from his lip with a napkin. "Quiet is underrated." A pause. "Besides, victory speeches are cheap. Follow-through is expensive. 1,200 rehired workers might disagree." "Rehired and retrained," he corrected gently. "The new transition fund is real. Signed yesterday." He tapped his notebook. "But implementation is everything. Veronica's allies won't vanish. They'll circle like chess pieces waiting for my next misstep." Cammy straightened. "Then we'll ensure they don't get that chance." She pulled out her phone, scrolling the trending tags. Rehire and reskill. People, not spreadsheets. Public sentiment's with you right now. Use it. Miles considered. "You're right. Optics matter." He chuckled softly. "Amazing how a pastry girl became my strategic compass." She shrugged. "Flour dust builds perspective." Their waitress swung by with the check. Miles reached for it, but Cammy was quicker, sliding 2 crisp 10s onto the tray. "My treat," she declared, then leaned in conspiratorially. "Bakery raised wages after our emergency hotline donations. I can splurge." He surrendered with a grin. "I won't argue, but allow me to cover dessert tonight." "Tonight?" Her heartbeat skipped. "There's a jazz set at the Riverside Theater, something low-key, no photographers." She stirred coffee to hide her smile. "Sounds perfect." Across town, the Whitaker Frey skyscraper reflected a sunrise of molten copper. On the 43rd floor, Veronica Frey stepped from the private elevator, stilettos striking marble like gavel blows. She no longer wielded board power, but shareholders still feared her family's clout. In conference room B, 3 loyal directors waited, dossiers spread. "Durant's gone. We're bleeding credibility," one murmured. Veronica's stare could slit throats. "Credibility is perception. Perception can be shaped." She flicked a manicured nail against a tablet showing Miles's viral speeches. "Our dear CEO thinks sentiment will protect him. Sentiment is fickle." "Share price bounced 5% after reinstatement announcement," another noted nervously. "Temporary sugar rush," Veronica said. "We'll find the crash point." She slid a legal document forward. "Shareholder derivative action. Preliminary draft. A lawsuit alleging reckless spending on unapproved reskilling fund. We paint him as cavalier with equity. Investors hate risk." "But evidence?" She smiled. "We construct evidence." The directors exchanged alarmed looks. Veronica leaned closer. "Miles gave weapons to a bakery girl. Find her weakness. Anything. If we fracture that bond, we isolate him again." At the bakery, the morning rush resembled a carnival of cinnamon steam and clattering tongs. Cammy slipped behind the counter for her shift. She'd insisted on keeping part-time hours, refusing Miles's offer to hire her as full-time consultant until she finished her degree. Maya smirked from the frosting station. "Ms. Viral," Maya sang, waving her phone. A paused clip showed Cammy beside Miles on the pallet podium. "You're trending harder than maple cronuts." Cammy blushed. "It'll fade. Girl, that smile of his when he looks at you? #forever." Maya winked, then grew serious. "Take care. Internet love flips fast." Cammy nodded. Echoes of Durant's leverage warning rang in her head. But she couldn't abandon normalcy. Kneading dough rooted her better than any quote. Around 11 a.m., the bakery doors chimed and 2 impeccably dressed women walked in. Business casual, oversized handbags, no pastry interest. Cammy recognized corporate aura instantly. They sidled up to the counter. "Caramel macchiato," said one absent-mindedly, eyes scanning. Cammy poured drip instead. The espresso machine was down. She passed the cup, but the woman didn't drink. "We're with Whitaker Frey Compliance," she whispered, flashing a badge too quickly for verification. "Ms. Alvarez, correct? We'd like a word in private." Cammy's spine stiffened. During work hours? Bad timing? Her manager, Mr. Perkins, overheard and frowned. The second woman produced a thin envelope. "Subpoena to depose in internal review. You'll attend tomorrow, 9 a.m. Cammy's fingers brushed the envelope. Veronica's move. She swallowed irritation. Understood. The women left without pastries. Maya rushed over. "They looked like IRS and Vogue had a baby. You okay?" Corporate intimidation. Cammy forced a shrug. "I'll lawyer up. Can't Miles protect? He's juggling board civil war. I won't be the damsel." She inhaled a steadying whiff of cardamom buns. "Besides, truth's on our side." Miles spent the afternoon with legal counsel, carving bulletproof governance reforms. Mid-meeting, his assistant burst in. "Compliance served Ms. Alvarez." Miles shot from his chair. "On whose authority?" "Veronica's contingent. Claims irregularities in your charitable expenses." A muscle jumped in his jaw. He dismissed counsel and dialed Cammy. She answered on break, voice calm but tired. "I expected their play." "I'll dispatch our lawyers." "Miles, no. That confirms I'm your puppet. I'll attend. Answer truthfully. Let them see transparency." He paced. "They'll twist your words. I'll memorize them like Latin." She chuckled lightly. "Focus on corporate reforms. Tonight, jazz, remember?" His pulse slowed. Jazz. 8 p.m. He ended call, determination flaring. If they wanted war, he'd fight with sunlight. He summoned Jenna and Wayne. "Prepare a media release. Whitaker Frey waives NDAs for employee testimony regarding board misconduct. Transparency is now policy." They gaped. "Sir, that's unprecedented." "Exactly. And ensure Cammy's deposition is on video, fully public." Wayne smiled. "That'll neuter intimidation." Miles nodded. "Also, dig for any financial ties between Veronica and compliance officers." Evening draped the city in velvet as Miles and Cammy met outside Riverside Theater. She wore simple black dress, hair swept back, and nerves disguised beneath lipstick applied in bakery bathroom. He offered his arm. Warm jazz chords spilled onto sidewalk. Inside, golden sconces cast soft halos as the quartet riffed through standards. They found a small table near stage. Candles flickered between them, casting gentle shadows. First set soared, sax solo spiraling like caramel ribbon. Cammy closed her eyes, letting music knead anxieties. During intermission, Miles slid an envelope across. "Tuition grant. Anonymous donor." She blinked tears. "Miles." "No strings. You taught me to see beyond ledger lines." She squeezed his hand. "Then let me teach you a dance step." She dragged him to open floor where couples swayed. He moved stiffly at first, loosening under her laughter. Under saxophone moon, they forgot subpoenas, share prices. Just two souls syncing heartbeat to bass. When the set ended, applause thundered. The saxophonist announced surprise dedication. "To the workers of Elm Ridge and everyone fighting for dignity. This one's called Bread and Roses." Music rose again, haunting, hopeful. Miles wrapped an arm around Cammy's waist. She leaned into his side, feeling his exhale ripple through them both. Next morning, Cammy entered Whitaker Frey Compliance office. Glass walls, steel nerves. A panel of attorneys waited. Cameras recorded. Veronica observed via video link, lips thin. Miles sat behind Cammy, not as shield but witness. He'd insisted on open procedure. Lead attorney began. "Ms. Alvarez, please explain your financial relationship with Mr. Whitaker." Cammy folded hands. "None personal. He paid for breakfast twice. I paid for coffee once. That's the financial extent. Snickers in gallery, attorney flushed. And your attendance at gala? Invitation to scholarship fundraiser, attire provided on loan. I returned it. Did Mr. Whitaker promise benefits to you in exchange for companionship? Miles bristled. Cammy lifted chin. Irrelevant and offensive. But answer? No. She listed her volunteer hours organizing worker resources, receipts for childcare supplies paid from her account. Transparency disarmed accusations. Veronica's voice crackled through speakers. Why did Mr. Whitaker involve a bakery clerk in corporate matters? Cammy met the camera lens. Because board members forgot companies exist for people, not just profit. Sometimes an outsider reminds leadership of humanity? Murmurs erupted among staff behind cameras. Attorney shifted. No further questions. Miles's counsel requested records show all responses unscripted, uncoached. Panel adjourned. As Cammy stood, Veronica addressed Miles. Well played. The press will fawn over your babysitter's virtue. Enjoy popularity while it lasts. Cammy turned. Ms. Frey, I'd be careful insulting babysitters. They raise CEOs. Miles stifled a grin. Veronica's screen blinked off. Outside, sunlight-bathed lobby. Miles embraced Cammy. You were magnificent. My grandma's mug taught me grit, she joked, tears threatening. He whispered, I want you on payroll, head of community partnerships. She laughed. That's not a real title. It is now. He produced printed contract. She scanned. Salary triple bakery wage, tuition support, flexible school hours. She hesitated. My co-workers need me. You'll still moonlight if you wish, but your vision deserves scale. She signed, pen shaking. Veronica wasn't done. In a brownstone office uptown, she met with a shadowy figure, media mogul Alistair Greer. He sipped scotch. You want smear pieces. A drip campaign, Veronica purred. Question Whitaker's stability, leak medical rumors, romantic improprieties. Greer shrugged. Truth optional, but price steep. My family funds your digital expansion. She slid a USB across. Starting with this, footage of Whitaker dancing while layoffs loomed. Alistair inserted drive, watched grainy clip of Miles and Cammy waltzing under chandeliers. Headlines formed in his mind. The smear launched that night. Tabloid sites blazed CEO tangos while towns tank. Twisted narrative implied gala extravagance during crisis he'd created. Photos of Cammy circled. Mysterious mistress influences billionaire. Bots flooded social channels. At Crisis HQ, Wayne cursed. They're spamming deepfakes now, claiming layoffs still on. Jenna pulled analytics. Trending negative hashtags traced to bot farm in Eastern Europe, funded via shell companies linked to Greer Group. Miles paced. We fight misinformation with radical transparency. Cammy, scanning hateful comments, looked tired but resolved. Let's give them live stream truth. Factory floor tomorrow, walk viewers through rehiring process. Miles agreed. They scheduled global webcast, inviting journalists to Elm Ridge. But Veronica planned sabotage. She tapped internal security staff loyal to Durant, instructing them to stage an accident, electrical fire, small but dramatic, the morning of live stream, making Miles appear incompetent at safety. On site, Lupe received anonymous tip. Check panel 7 in Northwest Wing. She called Cammy, who was setting cameras. They rushed. Wires frayed, accelerant residue. Lupe cut main power. Cammy alerted fire marshal. Miles arrived to chaos, but cameras still rolling. He addressed viewers. Safety first. This is what we inherited, neglect disguised as savings. We'll rebuild right. Fire crews confirmed arson soon after. Message flipped. Whitaker protective, saboteurs desperate. News outlets turned scrutiny toward former board. Investigative journalists traced shell companies to Veronica's nephew. Arrest warrants issued. Days later, Veronica surrendered to authorities, face devoid of triumph. Alistair Greer released statement distancing his outlets, but advertisers fled. Whitaker Frey stock stabilized. Workers clocked full shifts. In a quiet ceremony at City Hall, Miles signed a legally binding charter. Employee representation on board, profit-sharing model, community advisory council led by Cami. Reporters asked her for Latin motto to mark new era. She smiled, Cressimus Simul. We grow together. Miles slipped his hand in hers before cameras. This time, no embarrassment, only certainty. That evening, back in their diner booth, Cami raised her grandma's mug. To growth. Miles clinked his cup. And to stories worth investing in. Outside, dawn lights glinted on puddles, but inside, horizons stretched wider than corporate skylines. 6 weeks later, the Whitaker Frey Community Advisory Council convened its inaugural meeting in a sun-filled auditorium overlooking the Hudson. Folding chairs formed ragged semicircles instead of the polished boardroom Miles's staff had proposed. Cami insisted on the layout. Circles encourage eye contact. Mahogany tables intimidate. She'd spent the dawn pinning hand-drawn name tags to recycled lanyards, nervous energy making her hum snatches of jazz under her breath. At 9 a.m., sharp, doors swung open. Employees from every tier, forklift drivers, line supervisors, payroll clerks, filtered in beside neighborhood pastors, high school STEM teachers, and small business owners whose storefronts flanked the factories. Some wore Sunday best, others sported steel-toe boots dusted in flour or metal shavings. They moved cautiously at first, like strangers stepping onto a dance floor with no choreography. Miles greeted each in turn, sleeves rolled, handshake firm, repeating names with near photographic recall. Another skill Cami had discovered since that first breakfast. He motioned people toward coffee urns and trays of bakery pastries, donated, of course, while Wayne live-streamed setup on Whitaker Frey's social channels. Transparency had become an addiction. What began as defense against smear campaigns had evolved into an operating principle. Every meeting agenda, budget draft, and safety metric sat in an open online repository updated weekly. Skeptics still scrolled, hunting for discrepancies, but critics found fewer shadows to poke. Cami tapped the microphone. Good morning. I'm Cami Alvarez, head of community partnerships. The title still warmed her like fresh cinnamon rolls. Today isn't a presentation, it's a listening session. She scanned the crowd. If an idea occurs, raise your hand. If a question nags, interrupt. Dissent welcome. Murmurs of approval. In the front row sat Lupe Morales, wearing her hard hat like a crown. Beside her, Ebony Pierce balanced a notepad and a toddler in frog pajamas. Child Care Center hadn't opened yet. Harold Jensen, post-surgery and rosy-cheeked, occupied an aisle seat, cane propped against his knee. Seeing them anchored Cami's fluttering nerves. Miles stepped beside her. Today, we decide how Whitaker Frey invests 5% of quarterly net in workforce well-being and community growth. A ripple of surprise. 5% translated to tens of millions. He continued, this council determines priorities, scholarships, child care, green projects, entrepreneurial incubators, then reports directly to the board, which now includes 2 employee directors elected last week. Applause rose, tentative at first, then rough and earnest, like calloused palms meeting polished possibility. First to speak was a gray-bearded machinist, Clyde. He cleared his throat. Been here 32 years. Management always talked equity but never handed us the chalk. This feels different. If you're serious, start with heat pumps in the South Wing. Winters are brutal on older workers. Noted, Cami said, scribbling on a giant easel. Energy retrofit and ergonomic upgrades. A 20-year-old coding apprentice raised her hand. We need a free shuttle from the light rail station. Car insurance costs more than my rent. Lupe chimed in. And partner with the Culinary Institute downtown. They can supply healthy canteen meals. My crew lives on vending machine sugar. Ideas snowballed. on-site laundromat for single parents, micro-grants for employee-founded startups, mental health clinics with bilingual counselors. Cammy filled sheet after sheet, pages fluttering like wings of an agenda ready to fly. Near noon, as momentum hummed, Miles's phone vibrated, a secure line reserved for emergencies. He excused himself. At the auditorium exit he answered, voice low. Jenna spoke on speaker with urgency. "Sir, we've uncovered something in the digital vault Veronica's lawyers handed over last month, an encrypted project under codename Helix. We cracked it this morning. You need to see." He frowned. Summarize. It's a proposed merger, a hostile bid by Juno Tech Holdings to acquire Whitaker Frey in pieces. Plan devised by Durant and an outside bank. They expected share price to nosedive after layoffs. Juno Tech started quietly buying. They now control 11%. Miles's gut tightened. Juno Tech, famous for slashing wages, automating plants, relocating overseas. If they crest 15%, they trigger mandatory tender. And they've launched hush-hush lobbying against your governance reforms, claiming they're unsustainable philanthropy. Miles inhaled. "Thank you. Alert legal. We'll counter before markets open Monday." He pocketed phone, re-entered auditorium, but his eyes clouded. Cammy noticed. While a retired teacher spoke about adult literacy classes, she stepped to Miles. "Bad news?" she whispered. "Another storm. But let's finish this meeting." She caught the tightness in his smile. "Council deserves your full attention. I'll wrap here. Then you brief me." He nodded, gratitude flickering like lamplight in his slate eyes. He returned to the mic, closing the session with commitments and next steps, committees, budgets, timelines. When final applause faded and attendees queued for boxes of leftover pastries, he signaled Wayne to power down the stream. In a nearby conference nook fringed by potted ferns, Miles unfolded the Juno Tech reveal. Cammy listened, brow furrowing. "A hostile takeover would wipe community programs before ink dries," she said. "They'll claim cost efficiencies." Exactly, and with Veronica's shares plus sympathetic hedge funds, they might muster votes. Cammy paced. "How many total shares float?" 400 million. Juno Tech must propose tender for at least 51%. They're at 11, but climbing. Then we need allies to buy counter shares. Employees, customers, communities we just helped. Make it a people's defense. Miles's eyes sparked. An employee stock ownership plan. Offer discounted shares to workers. Also a public petition urging funds to reject the bid. Crowdfund our own company, she said, half joking. Not crowdfund, crowd-own, he corrected, brain gears whirring. He texted Jenna, schedule emergency task force. Cammy checked phone. Trending hashtag our hands-off why taker. Grassroots accounts already urging boycott of Juno Tech subsidiaries. Momentum, she realized, was currency heavier than gold. Later that evening, in Miles's penthouse kitchen, sleek marble now cluttered with mixing bowls, Cammy coached him through pie dough lamination. "You're overworking gluten," she warned, smacking his flour-coated wrist. He laughed, streaking flour on her cheek in retaliation. The tension of takeover threats loosened under buttery aromas. While crust chilled, she opened laptop to draft ESOP prospectus. Miles leaned over her shoulder, heartbeat syncing with her determined keystrokes. How did my life pivot from ROI matrices to cinnamon filling? Carbohydrates fuel revolutions, she quipped. He studied her profile. Freckles dusted like nutmeg. Determination bright as sunrise. "Cammy, there's something I've been meaning to ask." She stalled, pulse quickening. "Ask." "After finals, would you consider joining the board as the first employee community director? I'll vacate a seat." She blinked. "Me? At that table? You bring Truth's spreadsheets overlook." He brushed stray hair behind her ear, flower flecks dotting his tuxedo-framed memory. "And I trust you." Tears pricked. "Yes, if workers elect me." "They will." He smiled. They already did, metaphorically. Their gaze held until oven beeped. Monday dawn. Press conference streamed from Elm Ridge floor amid thrumming machines. Miles announced the ESOP, 10% of company shares reserved for employees at 30% discount, financed through future dividends rather than paycheck deductions, no risk to personal savings. Cheers erupted. Cami unveiled Community Golden Share Initiative. Local nonprofits each received symbolic share granting veto power over any acquisition that cut workforce more than 5%. Legal novelty, journalists buzzed. Stock reacted unpredictably. Initial dip, then surge as analysts praised innovative defense. Junotech's board issued statement calling reforms populist gimmicks. But regulators lauded inclusive capitalism. Several pension funds shifted votes to Whitaker-Frey. Behind scenes, Jenna projected numbers. If half-eligible employees enroll, we dilute hostile percentage to under threshold by next proxy. Lupe rallied shop floor signups. Ebony live-streamed tutorials on share basics. Harold offered the Union Hall for info sessions. Maya printed flyers, slipping them into pastry boxes. Within 48 hours, 67% of workforce pledged. Junotech retaliated with ad blitz painting Miles as reckless dreamer steered by unqualified girlfriend. Tabloids recycled Veronica's smears. Cami responded with open letter, "I am not Miles's accessory. I am a stakeholder, neighbor, future scientist, and yes, a baker. If that disqualifies me from shaping economy, perhaps economy needs new ingredients." Letter went viral. Bakery board trended. On Friday, SEC records showed Junotech share creep stalled at 12.4%. Analysts declared bid unlikely. Victory again? Not yet. Veronica still held 5% personally and lobbied allies. The final battle would be proxy vote in 6 weeks. Miles and Cami prepped roadshow to major funds, pitching sustainable profit plus people model. In Boston, a cautious asset manager asked, "How do you guarantee margins?" Miles gestured to Cami. She projected slide. Bakery analogies. Imagine dough, over-need for speed. You tear gluten and bread collapses. Rest periods yield elasticity, strength. Same for workforce. Invest now, you rise higher. Managers chuckled, impressed. Another block of votes swung. Between flights, they huddled over her grandma's mug, now traveling in padded case, sipping diner-brewed beans through airport cups. These tiny rituals grounded them as turbulence of markets rocked jets. One night in Seattle, hotel fire alarm forced evacuation. Later investigation revealed tampering. Security footage caught man linked to Greer Group. Miles tightened security for Cami. She resisted at first but conceded after Wayne pointed out credible threats. Greer went on televised interview calling Whitaker cult leader of woke capitalism. Miles responded live, "If caring about workers is cultish, sign me up." Ratings soared. Meanwhile, scholarship applications tripled. Science fairs across 5 states adopted Whitaker-Frey Challenge grants. Kids built solar ovens stamped with company logo, powered by People's Promise. 3 weeks before vote, Veronica requested private meeting. Against council advice, Miles invited her to corner booth of the diner at 6:45 a.m., neutral territory where stories unfolded. Cami watched from counter. She'd clocked in extra early to cover her shift, apron dusted with flour. Veronica arrived in ivory trench, disdainful gaze at cracked tiles. Miles rose politely. They talked in hushed tones. Cami couldn't hear words. She read body language. Veronica leaned forward, slid envelope. Miles shook head, pushed it back. She raised voice. He remained calm. She left abruptly, passing Cami without glance. Miles paid bill, approached counter. She offered to drop bid for board seat and perpetual veto power. He exhaled. I refused. Cami handed him bag with warm apple turnovers. Let her taste defeat. He looked tired, but hope flickered. With you, maybe victory's palatable. They left diner hand in hand, stepping into sunrise that glinted off wet asphalt, just as it had the morning they met. But the air felt lighter, fragrant with yeast of change rising. A thin slice of moon hung over Manhattan like a fingernail scar, but the city below pulsed with insomnia. On the 72nd floor of Whitaker Frey Tower, the war room glowed cobalt, walls plastered with flowcharts, stock ownership heat maps, and a running feed of the bakery board movement flickering across a 6-screen array. Jenna nursed her third energy drink. Wayne fiddled with code that scraped social media sentiment in real time, and Miles paced between islands of laptops, shirt untucked, hair rebelling against 19-hour days. At 1:14 a.m., the security feed chimed. Cammy stepped into the corridor wearing plaid pajama pants tucked into snowflake socks, a university hoodie, and a determined frown. She clutched a steaming mug, the floral porcelain survivor picked up from the diner before their cross-country crusade. The scent of peppermint tea drifted like a lullaby. "You," she said, pointing it at Miles, "have been pacing dents into the carpet for 90 minutes. Hydrate, then delegate." She pressed the mug into his hands. He smiled, despite exhaustion. "Delegation implies someone else can run probability trees blindfolded at 1 a.m. She lifted a brow. "Wayne's code did your tree in 6 seconds. Wayne spun his chair, thumbs up. Miles conceded with a sip. Peppermint steam unclenched his jaw. Cammy turned to the analysts. "Status on the undecided pension funds?" Jenna perked. "State teachers of Nevada. They hold 4.8%. They've asked to interview community reps, not execs." She gestured at Cammy. "They want you." Cammy blinked. "Me? Why?" "Trust," Jenna shrugged. "They've seen every CEO spiel. They want authenticity." Miles's mouth twisted wryly. "Apparently my authenticity has an MBA aftertaste. You, however, come with dough on your apron." Cammy's cheeks warmed. "Then we'll give them the full pastry case." She pulled her phone, scrolling. "Nevada time zone. We can host a virtual town hall tomorrow afternoon. Loop in Ebony and Lupe." Wayne angled his monitor toward Miles, a red spike on the sentiment graph. "Sir, new smear thread. Bots claim you siphoned ESOP funds for luxury perks." Miles groaned. "How many lies can Greer spawn?" "As many as his server farms can replicate," Jenna muttered. Cammy's fingers danced across her phone. "Then we use our secret weapon, open books, publish ESOP ledger line by line." Miles hesitated. "Competitors will see cost structure." "Let them," Cammy countered. "If they copy fairness, world wins. If they shy away, public sees contrast." Wayne's grin stretched. "Uploading now, live Google Sheet, real-time dividend accrual." As numbers spilled onto the company's transparency portal, Jenna watched reactions flood their monitoring tool. Emojis of clapping hands and green check marks outnumbering troll skulls. Boom. Narrative shifted. Cammy sat on the edge of Miles's desk. "Drink tea. Then sleep." He pretended to protest, but yawned betrayingly. "What about you?" "I'll crash after prepping for Nevada." She winked. "This is bigger than midterms." Miles set mug down, and in the hush between keyboard clacks, he reached for her hand. "Thank you for carrying this." She squeezed back. "We carry each other." 6 hours later, sunlight speared over the Hudson, gilding conference room glass. Cammy sat flanked by Lupe and Ebony, all wearing company-issued hoodies emblazoned with Crescimus Simul. Cameras broadcast to Nevada trustees. An older trustee named Mr. Alvarez, no relation, leaned close to his webcam. "Our teachers lost pensions in the '08 crash while CEOs took bonuses. Why should we trust another corporation?" Cammy rasped. "My grandma was a public school janitor in that crash. She lost half her savings." She lifted her mug. This mug survived the pawn shop because it had no monetary value, just history. Whitaker Frey's ESOP isn't charity, it's restitution. Workers become co-authors, not footnotes. Ebony shared her son's epilepsy story and how reinstated insurance saved him. Lupe detailed safety upgrades funded by the council. Heat pumps installed last week. Trustees exchanged glances. Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat, eyes glassy. Motion to vote. Minutes later, they announced support for the incumbent board. Cheers erupted. Miles barged in mid-celebration, hair still damp from a 4-minute shower. Heard the good news. He high-fived Ebony, hugging Lupe. When he turned to Cammy, impulse overtook decorum. He kissed her forehead, soft, lingering. Cameras still rolling captured it. Twitterverse erupted in awes. But somewhere across town, Veronica watched the feed from a penthouse suite temporarily leased during her suspension. She poured champagne into a crystal flute, then hurled it at the television, shards raining across Persian rugs. Enough! Her lawyer, a hawk-faced woman named Dahlia Voss, maintained composure. We still have moves, lawsuit depositions, negative option proxies, governor's veto power over golden share. She handed Veronica an envelope. Plus this. Veronica opened it. Medical file printouts. Where did you get these? Anonymous FedEx drop. Your mysterious benefactor, perhaps. She tapped the page. Cammy Alvarez's biological father, a former Whitaker plant manager, filed bankruptcy, defaulted on loans. Allegations of theft from equipment fund. Veronica's lip curled. So the girl carries hidden scandal. Perfect. She stalked to a whiteboard plotting PR strikes. We leak that she seduced Miles for nepotistic rescue of disgraced father. Whitaker's transparency turns into nepotism. Dahlia added, also a rumor Miles purchased her tuition, a board concern. Make sure it looks grassroots, Veronica ordered. Greer owes me one last favor. Meanwhile, Cammy and Miles celebrated teacher fund victory with fresh bagels on a riverside bench. Pigeons circled, eyeing sesame crumbs. Miles tore a chunk, tossing to the boldest bird. Cammy checked phone. Scholarship committee requests you keynote a virtual panel tonight. He groaned. What about a date that doesn't involve webcams? She smiled slyly. I booked us 2 seats at a rooftop planetarium. Private showing. He arched a brow. You delegating community time for stars? You need perspective bigger than market caps. She nudged him. Besides, I promised Grandma to spot Orion before winter ends. Night draped the city, crisp with February bite. The rooftop planetarium ballooned like a glass greenhouse lit from within. Inside, only 8 chairs faced a domed screen. The curator, an astrophysics grad student named Nikhil, greeted them with geekish enthusiasm. He dimmed lights, and cosmos unfurled overhead, nebulae swirling, galaxies pirouetting. Cammy gasped. Miles reached for her hand in dark. Nikhil narrated journey from Orion to Andromeda. When he described gravitational waves carrying memories of star collisions, Miles whispered, even galaxies merge gracefully. Companies can, too. Cammy tilted her head against his shoulder. If physics obeys empathy, why not economics? He kissed her cheek, starlight reflecting in his eyes. The screening ended. Nikhil left them stargazing through rooftop telescope. Looking down to city grid, Miles spoke, voice hushed. After proxy, if we win, I want to establish a permanent endowment, the Alvarez Fellowship, for first-generation scientists. Her breath hitched. Miles, it's too much. It's overdue. He brushed thumb along her jaw. And I want to tell board we're together. Transparently. She tensed. Public mixing of roles invites backlash. Backlash is inevitable. Honesty diffuses it. He waited. She inhaled cold air, exhaled fear. Okay. Together, public. They sealed agreement with tender kiss. Morning tabloids shattered serenity. Headlines screamed, CEO's girlfriend's father and factory fraud scandal, saved by Whitaker. Nepotism or love. Bakery board girlfriend gets golden job. Greer Group channels recycled documents alleging Miguel Alvarez embezzled funds, then vanished to avoid charges. Rumors miles from truth. Twisted story implied Miles hired Cammy to whitewash family name. Stock dipped 4% pre-market. In the war room, Cammy stared at smear pages. Her hands shook. My father left when I was 6. He's never worked at Whitaker. He was a freelance mechanic. She looked at Miles, anguish raw. They're inventing history. Wayne traced document metadata. Forged last week. Digital signature of Durant's cousin. Jenna scanned forms. Bots pushing hashtags True Fellowship Fraud, Shoe Pancake Paramore. Cammy forced steady voice. We answer with facts. Grandma kept Dad's letters. She opened her tote, retrieving dog-eared envelope stack. Proof he lived in Texas during alleged theft. Miles cupped her face. You shouldn't have to bear childhood wounds. She met his gaze. Translucent dough, remember? He swallowed. Then we release an affidavit from HR verifying no Alvarez employed during that period. Wayne? Already pulling payroll archives, Wayne replied. Jenna uploaded Grandma's letters, redacting personal details. She wrote thread, receipts versus rumors. Within hours, independent fact-checkers labeled smear false. Share price recovered. But Cammy retreated to bakery mezzanine, tears splattering parchment paper. Maya hugged her. Public's fickle, but those who matter see you. Cammy sniffled. I expected attacks, just not resurrected ghosts. You buried them with truth, Maya assured. That night, Miles cooked vegetarian chili in Cammy's tiny apartment. No city vista, just brick wall scenery and drip of radiator. As beans simmered, he held her. We have 2 weeks until proxy. They'll escalate. She nodded against his chest. I'm braced. Doorbell rang. A courier delivering small package. Inside, a single wilted rose and note scrawled, Every flower wilts under scrutiny. No signature. Miles' clenched jaw. Intimidation's all they have left. He handed note to security team. They installed cameras at Cammy's building, but she insisted on sleeping home. Normalcy weapon. Proxy week arrived. Shareholder meeting slated at downtown convention hall. 2,000 in person, thousands remote. Miles rehearsed speech about sustainable capitalism. Cammy refined community report. Veronica's faction filed emergency injunction to delay vote, citing unresolved allegations. Judge denied. Evidence obviously fabricated. Greer, cornered, pivoted. Exclusive expose promising secret recordings of Miles disparaging employees. Premiere scheduled eve of vote. Wayne hacked preview. Composite deep-fake audio stitched from press clips. Crisis team produced side-by-side analysis, watermark mismatches. Tech influencers debunked within minutes. Greer's credibility imploded, advertisers pulled. Proxy eve, tension thick as glaze before set. Council hosted solidarity rally outside convention hall. Band played Bread and Roses. Lupe grilling street tacos. Ebony selling cookies shaped like shares. Crowds waved banners. We are Whitaker Frey. Inside, Miles and Cammy hid backstage, final nerves sparking. He adjusted her blazer, charcoal with subtle flower print trim sewn by Maya. Ready, Director-elect? Ask me again after ballots? She smirked, eyes shining. He offered pinky. For luck. She entwined hers, and for people over profit. When MC announced meeting start, they walked onto stage hand in hand. Not as scandal, but symbol of partnership. Cameras flashed, but no smear could shrink their stance. Miles opened. Shareholders, employees, neighbors, we meet on equal footing. This company's value is not numbers alone, but the humanity behind them. He outlined results. Productivity up 7% post-reinstatement, absenteeism down, customer loyalty index highest in decade. Then he welcomed Cammy. She stepped to podium, voice steady. In botany, healthy ecosystems rely on diversity and mutualism. Whitaker Frey thrives when its ecosystem, workers, suppliers, community, thrives. Together, we turned layoffs into learning, fear into fellowship. Let's keep growing. Crescimus simul. Thunderous applause. Balloting commenced. Digital tablets, secure app. Tally board projected live counts. Tension rose as votes flickered like stock tickers. Yes to current board, 38%. Yes to Junotech slate, 18%. Undecided proxies, 44%. Miles's stomach knotted. Suddenly bar surged. Nevada teachers voted, plus 3 other funds influenced by Transparency Roadshow. Yes to current board, 51%. Crowd erupted. Tickers froze. Victory threshold passed. Miles exhaled. Tears blurred stage lights. Cammy gripped his hand. On screen, final tally, 57% incumbent, 26% Junotech, remainder abstain. Veronica, seated far right, stood and exited without looking back. Junotech reps slunk away as cameras panned. Chair of meeting declared official result. Whitaker Frey shareholders have affirmed present board. Congratulations. Confetti cannons fired. Wayne's mischievous contribution. Silver ticker tape drifted like snow. Ebony hugged strangers. Lupe waved cap. Factory livestream projected cheering crew. Backstage, Miles pulled Cammy into arms. We did it. She laughed through tears. No, they did. We just kept the oven warm. He kissed her deeply amid swirling confetti. Reporters captured photograph. A baker and a CEO sharing triumph of shared humanity. Outside, dusk painted sky lavender. Workers poured into streets singing Bread and Roses as city lights winked alive. But one chapter's close births another's opening line. The night of the proxy triumph bled into a neon-lit dawn before anyone from the inner circle thought about sleep. City traffic hummed beneath celebratory haze, taxi horns harmonizing with distant chants that still floated from the convention hall plaza. Workers refusing to go home until every brass band's final note faded. Cammy and Miles slipped out a side entrance around 3 a.m., escorted by a single security guard who looked more like an exhausted uncle than a body shield. No paparazzi waited. For once the press had followed the bigger story. The spontaneous midnight block party where line cooks danced beside data analysts, unified by the improbable notion that corporate news could taste like victory rather than pink slips. Instead of summoning a driver, Miles insisted they walk. Confetti dotted his hair like silver dandruff. Cammy plucked a strand free and tucked it into her blazer pocket. Souvenir for her scrapbook, if she ever found time to keep one. Manhattan's spring humidity clung to their skin as they strolled up 9th Avenue, the air smelling of rain on hot asphalt. Strangers recognized them in passing and offered thumbs-ups, but none intruded. It felt as if the entire city understood the sanctity of post-battle silence. At the corner of 44th, they ducked into an all-night bodega. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead while a sleepy cashier rang up 2 electrolyte drinks, a pair of protein bars and a bouquet of slightly wilted gerbera daisies that Cammy insisted on rescuing from the discount bucket. We should be drinking champagne, Miles mused while handing over a black titanium Amex. Champagne is for finish lines, Cammy replied, hugging the floppy flowers like a newborn. We just crossed a threshold, totally different ceremony. Outside, they sat on an overturned milk crate and a stack of newspaper bundles, devouring protein bars and laughing when melted chocolate streaked down Miles's wrist. Passing headlights cast shifting mosaics on nearby brick walls, turning their shadows into giants, then shrinking them again. Board meeting next Monday, Miles sighed between swigs of berry-flavored electrolytes. We have to cement bylaws before anybody's enthusiasm evaporates. Employee directors get sworn in, and your golden share veto needs final legal ratification. Cammy wiped her mouth. We can start drafting tonight. But first, rest. Your eyeballs look like bruised plums. He gave her a sideways glance thick with affection. Physician, heal thyself. When did you last sleep? Unclear, she admitted. Time became theoretical when the smearbots started. They shared a weary grin. The bodega owner stepped outside to smoke, observed them for a beat, then shook his head. You two saved a lot of jobs tonight. Coffee's on the house next time. He flicked ash into the gutter and disappeared inside before they could thank him. A sudden breeze ruffled Cammie's hair. She inhaled, recognizing the moment as the eye of a new storm. After euphoria came the grind of implementation, turning grand pronouncements into policies that outlived press cycles. Across the street, a digital billboard refreshed to display a financial news segment announcing Whitaker Frey stock springs 9% after proxy. Analysts predict stakeholder era. But ticker text scrolled beneath. Junotech CEO vows to keep acquisition option open. Miles followed her gaze. They'll regroup, might bid again in 18 months. Cammie shoved the last of her protein bar into her mouth. Then we make ourselves too valuable to break apart. Culture first, profit follows. He leaned in, pressing forehead to hers. Marry me. She blinked pop crumbs of surprise. What? Miles stilled. That was not how I rehearsed it. You rehearsed? Her voice lifted an octave. Boardroom mirror, this morning. In case we won, he confessed, cheeks tinted pink. I know it's sudden, but after everything, fires, bot farms, deepfake scandals, life feels too short for caution. He reached into his blazer, producing a tiny cardboard box clearly scavenged from the bodega candy shelf. Inside lay a simple platinum band, dotted with 3 micro-diamonds, apparently purchased on a whim while paying for protein bars. Price sticker still clung to underside. Cammie gaped. Miles, I can't let you impulse buy an engagement ring between Gatorade and gummy worms. Technically electrolyte drink, he corrected. And the stones are lab-grown. Sustainable. His smile trembled. But if timing feels wrong, I'll wait. She held the ring, thumb brushing its cool surface. Emotions pirouetted. Awe, terror, warmth. I love you, she whispered. That's the truthful heart of it. But marriage under a microscope? Not now. She slipped the ring back into his palm, closing his fingers gently. Ask me again when we're not triaging headlines. He nodded, relief mingled with disappointment. Fair. He tucked the box away. But keep the flowers. They need you. They rose, walking the final blocks to Cammie's apartment building in comfortable quiet. Outside her stoop, he kissed her knuckles. Sleep. Tomorrow? Well, today. We draft bylaws. She climbed the stairs, turned. Hey, Whitaker? Yes? No regrets, only delayed milestones. She winked, disappearing through pulse-lit foyer. 3 hours later, Maya shook Cammie awake with an urgent knock. The bakery co-worker held a tablet screen inches from her face. They released video from last night. Your forehead kiss, trending top 3. Cammie groaned into her pillow. Sort by positivity? 70% adorable. Maya smirked. 20% jealous. 10% conspiracy about secret wedding. Cammie sat up, hair sticking out like frayed rope. Let them gossip. Real work calls. At Whitaker Frey headquarters, she joined Miles, employee directors Lupe and Harold, plus corporate counsel in the glass-walled strategy lounge. Bylaw drafting commenced, language guaranteeing. Minimum 2 employee-elected board seats with veto over workforce reductions exceeding 5%. 5-year lock-in clause preventing asset sell-offs without 70% shareholder approval. Mandated public quarterly town halls live-streamed. Community profit share reinvestment of minimum 3% of net for local resilience projects. Hours blurred, red-inked drafts piled. Lunch arrived, vegan falafel, and was devoured absent-mindedly. By dusk, final revisions locked. Everyone signed digitally. To commemorate, Miles used an old-school fountain pen on a ceremonial scroll Cammie had designed with botanical illustrations. Feels like signing a Declaration of Independence, Harold mused, wiping ink smudge from mustache. It is, Lupe replied. Independence from fear. They toasted with sparkling water. Wayne burst in waving phone. Governor just ratified golden share. It's law. Cheers erupted. Cammie high-fived Jenna. Miles hugged Wayne. Even stern counsel cracked a grin. Victory reached Elm Ridge in seconds. Plant floor halted as sirens blared celebratory staccato. Ebony video called Cammy, tears streaking cheeks. "We're safe, girl. Safe." Cammy's heart swelled. "You secured it. We just wrote it down." Elsewhere, Veronica Frey packed. She stood before a panoramic penthouse window, dusk turning skyline gold. Dahlia Voss delivered final blow. SEC opened investigation into Junotech collusion. Greer subpoenaed. Best you disengage. Veronica exhaled, bitterness twisting lips. Whitaker won hearts, but hearts don't pay dividends. Actually, stock's up 9%, Dahlia noted. Veronica's eyes narrowed. So the era shifts. She clasped suitcase. Time to shift with it. She exited, high heels clicking an uncertain future. A week later, Whitaker Frey hosted its first open house at HQ. Families toured labs. Kids printed 3D cookie cutters shaped like company logo. Lupe narrated machine learning dashboards that predicted safety gear faults. Cammy led rooftop pollinator garden tour, bees buzzing among echinacea and lavender. She named every species in Latin. Children giggled, trying to pronounce. Mid-afternoon, Miles pulled her aside to a balcony. He wore jeans, rare, and a Whitaker Frey hoodie. "Remember request for delayed milestone?" She arched brow. "I recall." He produced a small linen pouch. No ring this time, just placeholder. Inside lay a dainty seed packet labeled Bellis perennis, common daisy. "Plant these with me," he said. "When they bloom, I'll ask again. If petals approve, you'll know." She laughed, eyes misting. Bellis perennis thrives in tough soil. Perfect. They planted seeds that evening in rooftop garden under string lights, hands dirty with hopeful earth. Summer rolled, busy but balanced. Cammy finished finals, nailed her botany thesis on urban pollinator corridors, a study partly funded by Whitaker Frey Fellowship but peer-reviewed to avoid conflict. Miles presented at World Economic Forum on stakeholder governance. He cited bakery analogies, earning amused applause. Junotech sold its remaining shares quietly, profits slim. They focused on easier prey. Greer issued public apology, citing AI deceit. Lawsuits cost him network. Whitaker Frey profits exceeded projections despite new cost-sharing. Productivity soared. Analysts grudgingly credited engaged workforce. Yet challenges persisted. Supply chain shocks, rising inflation, climate-triggered floods near Elm Ridge. But Community Council activated relief fund within hours, proving new systems' resilience. Late September, daisies erupted in rooftop beds, white petals glowing against city's steel canyons. At sunrise, Miles stood among blossoms, heart pounding. He turned to find Cammy already there, watering can in hand. "Tough soil, strong bloom," she said, smile radiant. He knelt, this time with a ring crafted by Lupe's cousin, a metalsmith who fused recycled machine scrap with lab-grown sapphire blue as sapphire-winged bee. "Camila Alvarez, will you marry me?" She knelt too, smashing tradition with laughter. "Only if vows include lifetime pancake provisions." "Agreed." They slipped ring onto her flower-scarred finger. City stirred awake below. Council meeting later that morning paused as Lupe announced engagement. Applause, tears, jokes about stock price surging on romance. But romance was not the company's core. It was the proof that humanity and enterprise could cohabit, that a CEO could learn Latin flower names from a pastry clerk and rebuild capitalism's story. That night they returned to their diner booth. Same chipped table, same waitress who winked. Grandma's mug sat between them, filled with diner coffee no better than before, but infinitely richer in memory. Cammy whispered to Miles, "Ready for what's next?" He lifted the mug in toast. "Always." The bell above the door jingled as new patrons entered. Some workers, some executives, no visible divide. And in that ordinary melody, the future hummed. Not a perfect harmony, but a melody everyone could learn. Thunderheads torqued above Manhattan like charcoal smudges, but inside the Whitaker Frey Auditorium a different storm gathered. All-hands rehearsal for the company's first People and Planet Summit. 200 volunteer employees hustled between poster boards, VR kiosks, and a stage dominated by a 15-foot flower-shaped LED screen. Every pedal displayed a facet of the firm's new credo: profit, people, planet, purpose, participation. Cami oversaw logistics, headset crooked, clipboard tapping her thigh in an improvised metronome. Lupe, the exoskeleton demo needs harnesses inspected, safety sticker or we pull it. Harold, union choir to sound check at 4, not 4:30. Jenna, tell catering no shellfish, too many allergies. She pivoted, catching a reflection of herself in the vast screen. Charcoal blazer, sleeves rolled, white daisies stitched at cuffs, engagement ring winking like a mischievous star. 2 days until the summit. 3 until her wedding to Miles. The docket read like utopian fiction. Keynote by indigenous climate scientist, town hall on equitable AI, hackathon awarding micro-grants to shop floor inventors. If successful, pundits said, Whitaker Frey would birth a template other corporations would copy or mock. Cami relished the risk. Dough never rises without yeast. Across town, Miles presented quarterly numbers to analyst webcast in a minimalist studio. Stock still rode the post-proxy high, but margin compression loomed, energy costs spiked, and a shipping bottleneck in the Suez Canal threatened raw material inflow. Yet he spoke with measured confidence. Local supplier diversification, rooftop solar arrays, and a proprietary just-in-case inventory model he credited to frontline brainstorming. Analysts grilled him, but goodwill from worker-centric reforms cushioned skepticism. When livestream ended, he loosened tie, exhaustion pooling beneath eyes, then called Cami. Still breathing? Panting, but functional. Meet me on roof for sunset? 15. Bring chamomile, my brain's espresso-infused. The roof garden swallowed sirens in lavender calm. Bees hummed among the daisies planted months earlier from seed. Some blossoms bowed, others rallied. Much like the workforce, Cami mused. Miles waited by their favorite bench, thermos in hand. They watched sun melt into Hudson, tangerine to garnet. He slipped an arm around her. Board ratified climate clause today. 15% emissions cut by 2030, science-based target. She grinned. The daisies approve. She plucked a browned petal. Drying these for wedding table confetti. His eyes warmed. Speaking of which, guest counts exploding. Governor RSVP'd yes. Also, teachers fund trustees. Half the workforce, your entire church choir. We may need Central Park. Cami bit lip. Simple ceremony was the plan, but people want to witness hope. Hope can stream online. He kissed her temple. Let's keep vows small. After summit, slip away to grandma's town in upstate, church rec hall, potluck, karaoke. Her laughter danced on evening breeze. Deal. Phone buzzed. Wayne text, heads up. Major cyber probe flagged. She frowned. Miles read over her shoulder. They hurried downstairs to war room. Wayne pointed at network monitor. A brute force attack against HR data servers attempting to exfiltrate employee files. IP masked through 7 proxies. Final hop Asia. Pattern matches last year's bot farm, Wayne muttered. Greer's digital mercenaries or copycats. Jenna added, they targeted social security numbers, maybe to fake identities. So distrust. Miles rubbed temples. Isolate server. Push password reset. Draft transparency notice. No delays. But inside, dread curdled. Any data breach could sabotage the summit, tarnish the new governance model days before global journalists arrived. Cami squeezed his hand. Security team's stronger this time. We'll outflank them. Night stretched into 3 a.m. Cyber team contained breach. No data left server. Still, crisis drills activated. Miles crashed on office sofa. Cami curled against him, blazer as blanket. Before sleep, she whispered, 2 storms, digital and wedding. We'll ride both. He murmured, Our vows should mention firewalls. Next morning, rehearsal resumed when Harold rushed in clutching phone. Bad news. Flash floods in Elm Ridge, factory underwater up to ankles, lines halted. Pictures showed brown deluge swirling around machines just installed with safety grants. Miles blanched. Employees safe? Evacuated in time, Harold assured. But production downtime could sink Q3. The summit's optimism threatened to drown with the plant. Cammy recalled Ebony's toddler needing medication. No pay, no pharmacy. She looked at Miles. Eyes met with silent agreement. Minutes later, they convened emergency video call with Elm Ridge Council. Lupe reported damage. Local levy busted. Ebony asked if emergency fund covered payroll. Yes, but parts suppliers faced losses. Cammy spoke. We launch remote relief hub during summit. Pledge first million in flood mitigation. Miles added, disaster pay full wages. Idle shift volunteers will earn by assembling portable levy kits for neighbors. Workers' faces brightened. He ended call. Jenna raised eyebrow at budget implications. We'll cut summit fireworks, Miles said. Better spend on sandbags than pyrotechnics. Cammy high-fived him. Sustainability in action. Friday dawn, summit day. Security ringed HQ. Drones filmed rooftop gardens. Journalists swarmed. Cyber team on red alert. Miles's keynote scheduled 9:30. At 8:15, Cammy's phone buzzed unknown number. She answered amid backstage chaos. Camila Alvarez? Male voice, rough. This is Detective Marco Reyes, Austin PD. I believe I have your father. Her world tilted. Miguel Alvarez, absent 20 years. Alive? Homeless Outreach recognized his name after national articles about your wedding. He's in hospital, early-stage liver failure, but lucid. Cammy staggered. Harold steadied her. Miguel, bankruptcy, rumors of theft, weaponized by smear campaign. She'd buried hope he'd resurface. I can't leave Summit. Detective's tone softened. He asked me to give you this. Text notification. Photo attachment. Miguel lying in hospital bed holding newspaper clipping of her Daisy's speech, pride in weary eyes. Tears blurred screen. Miles approached, sensing quake. She showed him. Go, he said instantly. Family first. She shook head. Summit needs both of us. He'll understand. But she saw longing in his gaze. He too yearned for closure with her father. Harold interjected. Charter empowers Director Proxy. I can deliver your community address. Cammy exhaled, weaving through conflict. What if this is orchestrated? Smear Part 2. Miles considered. We'll verify with hospital, but truth or trap, you need answers. Jenna called from stage, 5-minute cue. Decision loomed. Cammy lifted Daisy's lapel pin. Grandma taught forgiveness heals faster than suspicion. She met Miles's eyes. After keynote corporate jet to Austin, we both go. He hesitated. Media schedule packed. Then he nodded. Summit runs 2 days. We'll address climate panel remotely. Wayne booked flight. Jenna reshuffled agenda. At 9:30, Miles stepped onto stage alone but steady. He opened with news of Elm Ridge flood, pledging funds live. Applause thundered. Then he spoke of resilience, how daisies thrive through cracks because roots network beneath soil. He credited Cammy's absence to urgent family reunion exemplifying our value. People matter network-wide. Livestream chat overflowed hearts. Stock ticked steady. By dusk, private jets soared over Appalachians. Cammy stared at clouds, fingers twisting ring. What if he's ashamed? Miles clasped her hand. He kept your article, Love Outweighs Shame. In Austin Hospital, they found Miguel pale but smiling. Cammy froze in doorway, years of hurt cluttered throat. Miguel rasped, Mija. She rushed to him, tears spilling. They embraced. Monitors beeped symphony. Miles stepped back, giving space. Miguel whispered apologies, explained life spiraled after losing job, debt, drinking. He had left to spare her burden. She listened, anger dissolving into empathy. "You're here now," she said, "and I have resources to help." Miles promised full medical care through company foundation. Miguel protested, but Miles insisted, family to family. Cammie's heart swelled. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, storm clouds rerouted again. Greer's media empire collapsed under SEC fines. His board ousted him. Veronica resurfaced on podcast, rebranding herself as stakeholder capitalism convert, but few bought it. Cyber saboteur arrested. Ex-Junotech contractor confessed under plea after tracing attack to offshore payments. With competitor in scandal, Whitaker Frey's model looked visionary. Elm Ridge reopened within a week, thanks to volunteer-built levee kits. Ebony's toddler danced in viral TikTok wearing hard hat half his size. 7 days later, in tiny upstate church festooned with yarn daisies and recycled confetti, Cammie walked down aisle to Jazz Trio's rendition of Bread and Roses. Community seats overflowed. Lupe escorted Harold. Jenna giggled with Wayne. Maya carried tray of cinnamon apple turnovers in lieu of bouquets. Miles waited at altar in charcoal suit, cufflinks shaped like tiny gears. Reverend, a retired machinist turned lay minister, opened ceremony. Love is labor and jubilee. Vows were simple. Miles, you showed me people behind numbers. Cammie, you proved capitalism can need kindness. Rings exchanged, her recycled scrap sapphire, his band etched with Latin motto she chose, Cresimus Simul. They kissed, congregation clapped, toddlers rang cowbells, streaming viewers cheered. Reception in Rec Hall lit by string lights. Potluck tables groaned. Empanadas, halal shawarma, vegan brisket. Miles's former chauffeur DJ'd. Employees line danced. Governor attempted salsa with Maya. At midnight, bakery crew wheeled in 10-tier cake shaped like skyscraper sprouting daisies. Cammie sliced with welding torch borrowed from plant. Frosting snowed. Miguel, frail but steady beside dialysis machine, toasted with ginger ale. To my daughter, who turned broken dough into bread for thousands. To Miles, who tasted and said, "More please." Tears glimmered. Honeymoon? They postponed. Crisis, always budding. Instead, they spent week in Elm Ridge volunteering, rebuilding homes, sleeping in trailer, laughing when mud ruined designer boots. One dawn, as they replanted community garden ruined by flood, Cammie found first seedling sprouting from waterlogged soil. She pointed, "Daisy." Miles knelt, brushing dirt. Resilient little revolutionary. He took photo, later posted to company intranet with caption, "We bloom again." Employees responded with selfies of gardens worldwide, hydroponic lettuce in Singapore office, rooftop tomatoes in Chicago warehouse. Movement matured into network. Plant a flower, post story of resilience. Stock analysts scratched heads. What's with daisies? But sales soared. Customers liked buying from hopeful brand. Year rolled. Forbes cover, The Daisy Effect. How Whitaker Frey outgrew Wall Street skeptics. Inside, Cammie profiled as Chief Empathy Officer. She laughed at title but embraced mission. Travel to suppliers, ensure fair wages, plant community gardens. Miles learned to leave spreadsheets at 6 p.m., baking sourdough weekly, still over-kneading yet proud. One evening on diner booth, waitress poured refill. "You two changed things," she said. "Not just company, people tip more since hope's in air." Cammie smiled. Daisies root deep. Miles raised mug. To next storm and next bloom. They clinked cups as neon sign buzzed outside, steady light in restless city. Narrative wasn't fairy tale. Setbacks would come, climate chaos, economic swings, board debates. But rhythms of bread and roses, of profit and people, would guide them like stars once guided sailors. And somewhere on a windowsill in Austin, Miguel watered a small pot where a daisy struggled skyward, proving again the gospel of roots. Damaged soil can nurture life when tended with humble hands. Cresimus Simul, we grow together, had become more than motto. It was a melody sung in factories, offices, bakeries, even boardrooms. a song of workers and executives twining stems toward shared sun. The first anniversary of the Daisy Charter dawned on a heat wave that blistered pavements from Manhattan to Manila. Weather anchors spoke of once-in-a-century temperature spikes arriving every other month. In Whitaker Frey's war room, the digital dashboard glowed crimson where sensors tracked factory roofs. 3 plants in the U.S. Midwest and 2 in South Asia were already brushing critical thresholds for worker safety shutdowns. Cami adjusted her hijacked bakery timer, now repurposed to remind the team to hydrate every hour. Sweat darkened the daisies printed on her linen blouse, but her voice remained clear as she addressed the global operations call. Rotate teams every 20 minutes, double water stations, and tell supervisors to override any production targets that clash with heat protocols. We lose output, we do not lose people. Lupe Morales, avatar flickering from Elm Ridge control room, nodded even as generators hummed to keep HVAC alive. We've got volunteers loading frozen gel packs into vests. She offered a weary grin. Your pastry freezer idea saved us. Miles, standing beside Cami, interjected. I've authorized hazard bonuses for everyone on site until the heat dome passes. We'll offset costs with idle marketing spend. A thread of relief crossed faces on screen, though tension remained. Heat-induced downtime jeopardized supply contracts. But the Daisy Charter's new article, Worker Climate Safety First, left no wiggle room, and every shareholder knew it. When the call ended, Cami rubbed sleep from her eyes. Second wave of the climate crisis is no longer future tense. Miles exhaled, jacket draped over shoulder. We need long-range adaptation. Retrofitting roofs won't keep pace. Then we redesign the business for a hotter planet. She pulled out notebook already brimming with sketches. Desert-inspired cooling towers, closed-loop water systems, night shift production lit by solar-charged batteries. By late afternoon, Jenna rushed in clutching a tablet. You should see this. A viral post showed workers in Bangladesh sewing line dancing in refrigerated break room, wearing bright yellow daisy pins. Caption, when capitalism gives you heat waves, make cool waves. Views topped 3 million. Wayne added, our brand sentiment spiked to 92% positive. People love seeing Charter in action. Miles nodded, but worry tightened his brow. Sentiment doesn't pay cooling tower capex. How do we finance global retrofits? Cami flipped to a fresh page. Green bond, 1 billion tiered coupons tied to hitting emissions and heat safety milestones. Investors have been begging for credible ESG paper. Miles's eyes kindled. But bond ratings agencies still skeptical of our stakeholder model. Invite them to the roof, she said. Let the bees testify. 2 weeks later, gentle evening rain cooled New York just enough for Whitaker Frey's rooftop reception. Representatives from Moody's and S&P picked through herb planter aisles smelling of mint and basil, while Wayne demoed smart glass cooling data. Cami guided them under string lights. Our retrofit math, payback 5 years via energy savings plus climate resilience dividend, production continuity during heat waves. Miles handed each analyst a chilled bottle of water harvested from atmospheric units installed on site, proof in every sip. The analysts asked tough questions. Miles and Cami answered in tandem, referencing open-source spreadsheets. A week later, Moody's issued preliminary A rating for Whitaker Frey's proposed Daisy bond. High governance transparency offsets novel risk factors. Jenna whooped when alert pinged. We're first U.S. manufacturer to get A on performance-linked bond. Cami high-fived her, but quickly sobered. Now we must deliver. Deliver they did. Ground broke on passive cooling canopies in Texas, seawater-powered air conditioning in Sri Lanka, and a pilot geothermal loop beneath Elm Ridge. Local union drillers trained by community college using Whitaker Frey scholarships. Media dubbed it Operation Cool Roots. But every triumph invited friction. An international plastics consortium, threatened by Whitaker Frey's move to biodegradable packaging, funded think tank reports labeling Daisy governance costly virtue signaling. Business television pundits parroted the phrase until it lodged like a thorn. Cami chose not to react publicly, but Wayne discovered bot activity reminiscent of last year's smear bursts. IP traces led back to a consultancy linked to the consortium. Miles considered litigation. Counsel cautioned distraction. Cami proposed counter-move, transparency again. At quarterly earnings, Miles opened slide deck not with profit graphs but with a bar chart of outdoor wet bulb temperatures alongside factory energy consumption, demonstrating correlation and cost savings from new cooling tech. Then he flipped to profit margin, steadily climbing despite heat downtime thanks to reduced absenteeism and unexpected brand loyalty surge. Reporters expecting defensive stance scribbled over hastily redrawn interpretations. Later that afternoon, the Plastics Consortium's stock dived following activist-led shareholder rebellion referencing Whitaker Frey's success. The phrase, costly virtue signaling, morphed online into sarcastic badge of honor. Jenna designed T-shirts. Employees wore them to softball league. Around this time, Cami received an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject, from one Daisy to another. Dear Cami, we are garment workers in Phnom Penh. We watched your heat safety protocols and used them to push our factory for fans and brakes. Thank you. Daisy Solidarity. She blinked away tears and forwarded to Miles. Global resonance, he whispered, but also global responsibility. We can't let Daisy become just a logo. Cami nodded. Which brings me to next idea. Open source the charter under Creative Commons. Any company can adopt but must self-report metrics. Miles raised eyebrows. Shares might ask why we hand away IP. Because climate clock ticks faster than patents. Influence is brand moat. Board debated. The two employee directors agreed. Outside members hesitated until Harold drew on whiteboard a simple equation. Influence x trust, secret x niches. Vote passed 6-3. Whitaker Frey uploaded charter template. Within month, 30 mid-size firms signed Daisy Pledge, including a German appliance maker and a Kenyan ag-tech startup. Press lauded the movement, but regulatory eyes sharpened. If Daisy Charter became de facto standard, governments might mandate parts of it, a threat to laissez-faire lobbyists. Letters reached Congress warning of creeping collectivism. Miles flew to D.C. He met with skeptical senators, armed not with lobbyists, but with Ebony and Lupe, who told flood and heat stories firsthand. Senators listened. Some left the meeting wiping eyes. Bills stalled, for now. On personal front, Miguel Alvarez's health held steady. Twice a month, Cami flew to Austin for dialysis sessions turned father-daughter book club, reading botany journals and Spanish poetry. Miguel insisted on mailing small packets of homegrown basil seeds to Elm Ridge crews. Ebony planted them near cafeteria window. Fragrance lifted morale. Grandma's mug remained in Cami's office, now flanked by a polished sphere of recycled aluminum, a gift from machining team engraved Cressimus Simul Year 1. She drank morning coffee from it when meeting ministers or union leaders, but at day's end always returned to chipped porcelain. Marriage with Miles settled into comfortable swirl of board papers, midnight baking experiments, and lazy Sunday bike rides to community gardens they funded. Yet time alone grew scarce. Crisis cycles overlapped. One July evening, they finally reached their upstate cabin for promised delayed honeymoon. They grilled vegetables, swam in lake, stitched constellations on sky. On the second night, a neighbor's generator sparked wildfire that tore through pines toward the cabin. Miles grabbed fire extinguisher. Cami dialed 911 while stamping embers with wet towels. Volunteer brigade arrived. Flames died. Smoke lingered. Cabin survived, but charred daisies outside signaled new fragility of even restful escapes. Driving back to city, Cami watched scorched landscape flicker past. Personal resilience can't outpace planetary chaos forever, she murmured. Miles squeezed her knee. Then Daisy Charter 2.0, adaptation plus mitigation. Her eyes met his. But bigger, multi-industry coalition. They brainstormed as highway lines blurred, cross-sector financing pool, climate refugee upskilling programs, and flexible 4-day week during heat seasons. Each idea scribbled on fast food napkins littering dashboard. September brought another challenge. A hacker collective calling themselves the Weathermen breached Whitaker Frey's public servers not to steal, but to display ominous message on company homepage. Corporations own 70% of world emissions. Pledges are flowers on a grave. Walk the talk or we'll uproot you. Wayne verified no data theft, but message sparked media frenzy. Some staff were frightened. Others whispered admiration for hacktivists' audacity. Boards of Daisy Pledge adopters panicked. Was movement credible target? Cami convened town hall the same day. She stood on auditorium stage, hundreds of employees and live streamers watching. I understand the fear. I also hear Weatherman's anger. We claim leadership. They demand proof. So next quarter we'll open our greenhouse gas ledger in real time, source level, audit it live. If we miss target, bonus pool goes to climate disaster relief. Murmurs turned into applause. Some skeptical faces hardened into respect. One employee asked, "If other Daisy companies don't match, won't we compete at disadvantage?" Cami spread her hands. Leadership means walking first. Others follow or fade. Miles introduced new initiative, climate impact forecasting tool built with open-source coders, free to any supplier to plan investment. The tool used Whitaker Frey's data as baseline. Media pivoted, praising bold transparency. The hacker collective posted on social feed. Respect gained. Watching. Wayne suggested turning initial defacement into official bug bounty program, inviting ethical hackers for reward. Cyber insurance premium fell by 10% 6 months later. Winter came early, snow blanketing Elm Ridge. Workers now rotated into newly insulated wings, geothermal loop warmed floors. Ebony's son ran down hallway chasing a remote-controlled snowplow built-in STEM after-school club funded by Whitaker Frey. In Manhattan, rooftop bees nestled, though a few still buzzed among frost-kissed daisies. Cami cradled a mug of hot cider, porcelain chipped, steam curling like hope. Miles approached, scarf flapping. Finance closed Daisy bond oversubscribed, $2 billion in bids. Will fund expansion to Latin America ahead of schedule. She beamed. More routes. Night settled and they surveyed city lights. Miles recited numbers. 0 layoffs, heat injury incidents down 80%, retention record high, revenue plus 13. Cami raised mug. Proof of concept. He shook head. Proof of people. Snow began to fall. Fat, slow flakes swirling among string lights, cushioning roof in silence. Cami caught one on glove, watched it melt. Fragile but beautiful, she said. Like our charter. He wrapped arms around her. Fragile only if isolated. We're part of storm and shelter. Below, factory sirens quiet for the night, but hum of servers carried their data into transparent sky. The Daisy Charter waved from flagpole, fabric snapping with each gust, petals outlined against moonlit clouds, signaling to workers, allies, critics, and unseen hacktivists alike that the experiment continued, alive and evolving. The second Daisy Day, June 12th, 2 years since the charter signing, arrived beneath a bright cobalt sky humming with cicadas. Whitaker Frey's Manhattan headquarters thrummed too, but with a quieter pulse. Final preparations for a hybrid gathering that stretched from Elm Ridge's rehoused wildflower prairie to a Nairobi solar panel plant, from workers' living room watch parties in Sao Paulo to a makeshift LED screen strung between date palms outside a Tunisian supplier's factory. Cami stood in the lobby's glass vestibule, barefoot for symbolic reasons. The council had voted this year to open with a grounding minute, a nod to soil that fed the daisies and the workforce alike. Her white linen dress fluttered around her calves, hem embroidered with tiny green stitches, Cresimus Simul in 30 languages. Streaming goes live in 15, Wayne announced, adjusting a camera drone that hovered like a curious hummingbird. Chat's already exploding with emojis from Manila. Let them know we'll start on time, Cammy said, sliding a headset behind one ear. She scanned the atrium. Kids from community STEM clubs tinkering at VR booths, long-tenure machinists pinning service medals to brand-new interns, CFO Rita Patel chatting amiably with the Union Choir's soprano section. 2 years ago, such mingling might have looked like forced publicity. Today, it felt like breathing. Miles entered from the side corridor, daisies tucked into buttonhole of a carbon-neutral suit. He kissed Cammy's temple. Board ratified the 4-day heat season week this morning. Unanimous. She smiled. Roots deepen. He glanced at her bare feet. Symbolism? Connecting. She wiggled toes. Plus, the floor's radiant cooled. They moved toward the stage. No podium this year, just a circular platform of reclaimed oak. Atop it stood a large hourglass filled with soil from every region where Whitaker Frey operated. At the opening gong, children would invert it, marking another year of shared stewardship. Backstage, Lupe checked a crate of saplings, hybrid poplars bred to sequester carbon rapidly. These go to the Bronx Green Corridor project after the stream, she told Ebony, who balanced a toddler on her hip. Miles crouched to fist bump the child. The boy offered a plastic shovel. Building new forests? Miles asked. With our tiny bulldozer. Ebony laughed. All screens flickered. Countdown 10, 9. The hum of 1.4 million remote participants seemed to vibrate the beams. Cammy inhaled the petrichor scent of potted soil. At 0, she stepped forward, spotlights dim, solar skylights bathing her in natural dawn. Welcome, colleagues, neighbors, friends. 2 years ago, we planted a seed called the Daisy Charter. Today, petals have spread farther than we dreamed. But a flower's purpose isn't beauty, it's to make seeds for others. She gestured upward. The LED halo unfurled live feeds. Elm Ridge roof packed with employees waving, Bangladeshi seamstresses beside misting fans, Austin dialysis ward where Miguel and fellow patients raised cups of cucumber water. Year 2 metrics, Cammy continued. Net emissions down 27%. Heat-related injuries, 0. 124 suppliers adopted Daisy Clause. Turnover at core plants, record low 3%, and profits, she glanced at Miles, up 14. Applause rolled through physical and digital halls. Miles spoke next, voice steady but charged. Shareholders once feared these choices would cut to the bone. Instead, we found new muscle, loyalty, ingenuity, resilience. But storms intensify. We need climate solutions quicker than markets typically allow. He raised a hand. The screen shifted to bold text. The Daisy Commons Fund. A $500 million mutual aid pool, he explained, capitalized by Whitaker Frey and 6 partner firms. Any company pledging full transparency can draw low-interest loans to retrofit against heat, flood, or fire. Repayment begins only after local living wage metrics are met. Gasps, nods, a flurry of chat hearts. Cammy signaled Wayne. Drones lifted behind stage, revealing 20-foot-wide banner. If the climate is shared, so is the safety net. Then came the grounding minute. Children in each hub inverted their local hourglasses. Sand-soil tumbles forming little dunes of possibility. Workers, executives, viewers at home, everyone barefoot or imagining they were, closed their eyes, feeling pulse in arches, empathy rising through souls. When silence broke, Ebony's Union Choir sang Bread and Roses in 4 languages. The drone panned overhead, daisies on rooftops swayed as if conducting. After stream ended, momentum zipped into meeting rooms. Cammy and Miles debriefed with partner firm CEOs about the Commons Fund term sheet. Most agreed. A holdout worried about rating agencies. Cammy countered by forwarding Moody's latest brief praising Whitaker Frey's stakeholder shock absorption model. Holdout relented. Downstairs traders might wonder if idealism had capped upside, yet private Slack channels of major pension funds popped champagne emojis. Early analytics predicted daisy-aligned companies would outperform peers under next decade's climate volatility scenarios. Late afternoon, Cammy stole away to rooftop greenhouse. She tended tomato vines, pruned basil. Miguel FaceTimed, dialysis beep audible. "Your basil grows like jungle," he teased. She panned camera to show newest beehive. He recited Neruda, "Podrán cortar todas las flores, pero no podrán detener la primavera." They can cut all the flowers, but they cannot stop the spring. Tears blurred her lens. He winked. Evening gala loomed. Journalists, dignitaries. Cammy slipped into dressing lounge, sliding on pale green sandals. Miles entered wearing open-collar shirt, no tie. He held a small case. "I thought we were done with jewelry," she teased. "Not jewelry." He opened case. Inside lay a slim brass key engraved with a daisy. "The Commons Fund Board voted you its founding chair." Her breath caught. "I'm still earning my MBA one night a week." "Exactly why they chose you. Ground truth over grand theory." She accepted key. "We'll need more than governance. We'll need story." He took her hands. "Then keep telling it." On ballroom balcony later, they toasted with sparkling kombucha. Below, delegates from 5 continents sampled fusion street food booths staffed by scholarship students. Over PA, an announcer mentioned evening star Venus bright overhead. Cammy led Miles outside. Sky glimmered. "Global finance still orbits quarterly earnings," she murmured. "But maybe we've nudged its axis a degree." "A degree matters," he replied. "Ask any climate scientist." She laughed softly. Next project. Daisy Schools, vocational academies powered by solar microgrids in climate risk zones. He didn't blink. "Let's draft it tomorrow." A hush fell. Snow-white searchlights drew giant petals on clouds. But the grandest spectacle happened ground level. Small groups exchanging phone numbers across wage bands. A Bangladeshi technician teaching a Boston coder to say "fool," flower, a Nairobi solar engineer gifting sunflower seeds to a Texan welder. Cammy brushed fingertips over her ring, cool under summer heat. She pictured their future children, or nephews or mentees, asking one day how capitalism changed. She would answer not with financial ratios, but with memories of daisies pushing through concrete roofs, of welders and pastry chefs singing the same union hymn, of board minutes that read like garden tending manuals. She leaned into Miles. "Ready for year 3? He smiled, haloed by city lights. "Always." They descended the marble stairs, blending into a mosaic of people who no longer fit easy labels. Somewhere in the mezzanine, a choir reprised Bread and Roses, voices rising over clink of compostable glasses. Outside on the sidewalk, a passerby paused at the building's digital billboard, now looping 3 simple words beneath a daisy icon: "Grow with us." And in that warm June night, many decided they would. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.